Right, they would have to work with them on that.
Yeah, I'm not even so sure. Can they take the model? You know, Jason's their character, but can they take...
This angry old man believes that there are two types of people in the world. The ones who follow the law and the ones who need to be punished. And he's about to do something
I think Gunn technically owns the original character, like the Choppa, Chad. Like, I think they own that.
Yeah.
I think that's how that works, at least in terms of merchandise.
From my understanding, I would assume that's the case.
Yeah, that's above my legal understanding. There's a person you can ask. Get him on the line. Call Larry right now. Actually, I should shoot a message like, yo, thoughts? What are we thinking here? Yeah, I ain't done.
Exclusive response. Lawyer explains all.
Lawyer explains
Gone
all.
section.
But yeah, moral story. The other thing I was saying, I'm glad there's a little bit of hope for that IP again. I don't jump straight to a remaster is happening, but I do think, remaster or not, I think a game is actively happening.
It should be.
Yeah.
It absolutely should be. While the iron is still hot, and it is. People are trying to still play with all the DNS and all that stuff going on. The F13 The Game subreddit is still popping.
You'd be surprised at how massive of a response an F13 remaster would get. Like, it'd break the internet for a day.
For sure. Absolutely.
That's why everyone's running this so much. We want it to be true. Like, Helmut's universe, and I only hope.
Welcome to Rediscovering Ourselves. We take you back to a core trauma.
I don't want you going there alone.
Are you afraid to go deeper?
Be honest and tell me that you wouldn't want a hot robot helper that cooks, cleans, and even does your taxes. It sounds great, right? The problem is, all it takes is one dumbass to teach them feelings, and the next thing you know, your nanny bot might turn into a Terminator. Out of all the crazy stuff we talk about, this is probably the one that's most likely to happen, so make sure your Alexa's turned off, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the killer robot nanny in Subservience. Nick here is a construction worker who's having some really bad luck. His wife Maggie just suffered a cardiac arrest, and while she's been in the hospital, he's been having trouble balancing his job with taking care of the kids. That's why tonight, he's taking them shopping for a new android assistant, but that was his biggest mistake. His daughter Isla here is blown away by how realistic the robots look. They can do all of your household chores and learn to adjust to your specific preferences thanks to their super intelligent programming. While he's talking to a salesman, Isla...
Absolutely insane to prove his point. He's dumped his life savings into a custom-built SUV specifically designed to torment anyone foolish enough to break in, and this deadbeat Eddie here just took the bait. Now he's going to be trapped for days at the mercy of this deranged boomer who wants nothing more than to watch him suffer. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the trap car in Locked. This guy is about to wish that he'd just gone to prison instead. Eddie here is a deadbeat dad who's struggling just to get by. Today, he's $500 short of a new alternator for his van, leaving him with no way to pick up his daughter Sarah from school, and the mechanic here is not cutting him any breaks. He keeps arguing with the guy until it gets physical, but during the scuffle, he's able to grab his wallet, pocketing the cash as they throw him back out onto the street. Desperate, he starts calling everyone on his contacts list asking for a loan, but when that doesn't work, he goes back to looking for some more stuff to steal. And as for the money, he spends it all on a Red Bull and some scratch-offs from the corner store. He goes right back to stealing from cars a minute later, and that's when he spots the mother of all luxury SUVs sitting in an unprotected parking lot. Trying the door, he's excited to find out that it's actually unlocked, but little does he know that he's just made his biggest mistake. It turns out that there's nothing of value in there besides a fancy pair of sunglasses, and throwing them in his bag, he tries the handle only to find that now the doors won't open, realizing with a shock that he's just been locked inside. Okay, I swear, this guy was willing to do anything except fill out a job application. Sorry, Eddie, we all make mistakes in life, but ditching your own daughter to go on a petty crime spree is just wrong, brother, and that's why you just f***ed up. Alright, where do I even begin? I love how you're acting like the mechanic was the bad guy when at least he's out here trying to make a semi-honest living. Sure, you need the van to make money, but he needs money to run his business and pay his employees. No offense, but obviously you're not the most trustworthy guy, and none of your friends were willing to spot you cash. Probably because you never pay them back, so why should he? Then, as soon as you did get your hands on $20, stolen from a guy who earned it by the way, you spent it all on lottery tickets. And I think this tells us everything we need to know about your priorities. Do you even know what your chances of winning one of those things are? You literally would have been better off using the money to buy some cardboard and a marker and try to crowdfund the rest of it the old-fashioned way. The worst part is that the trap couldn't have been more obvious. I mean, have you never heard of a bait car before? They literally did 5 seasons of a show about it, and you're supposed to be a car guy. So did the name Dolus not come as a red flag to you? I've never heard of that company before, and that's because it doesn't exist. But a quick Google search would have told you that it's a Latin word meaning deceit, trickery, or fraud. That's right, dumbass, the car was literally telling you in big bold letters that this was a mistake. But even if you really are just another casualty of society, you deserve everything that's coming your way just for littering. Yeah, don't think I didn't see that. The planet's not your dumpster, buddy. Now, have fun in this four-wheeled saw trap because it looks like you just f***ed up. Keeping his composure, Eddie goes to every door trying the handles one at a time, but even when he throws his shoulder into it, they don't seem to budge. Starting to get more desperate, he climbs into the trunk and wraps a hand in his jacket, trying as hard as he can to punch out the back window, but once again, no luck. This time he crawls into the back seat and starts kicking the glass, but even that isn't enough to do any damage. And just as he's about to run out of ideas, the touchscreen suddenly turns on. A moment later, the car starts receiving a phone call from a contact labeled "Answer Me." But Eddie here refuses to follow the instructions, going back to his escape plan instead. What he hasn't realized yet is that he's being watched through several pinhole cameras all over the vehicle, and the caller just keeps letting it ring every time that he tries to ignore them. Climbing back into the trunk, he finds a tire iron hidden underneath the floor, but no matter how hard he swings it, the glass still holds up. By now, it's starting to set in that he's in some serious shit, but he isn't out of options yet. Pulling off the door panel, he starts trying to unlock it manually, only to accidentally slice his arms on the exposed metal. As he looks closer, he realizes that the doors are reinforced with solid steel plates, and it looks like he won't be calling for help either because his phone is completely cut off from getting any signal. The cut on his arm is only getting worse, so with no other options that he can think of, he reluctantly reaches for the tablet and decides to answer the call. At first, there's only silence on the other end, but After a moment, he hears the friendly voice of an old, wealthy British man timidly asking if he's there. Introducing himself as William, the man explains that he owns the SUV, but when Eddie here starts cursing him out for trapping him inside, he activates a taser in the seat that sends a powerful jolt of electricity through his body, laughing with joy at the shocked look on his face. Getting more worried, he nervously asks to be let out, but the man says that he's not going anywhere until they've had a chance to talk, and starts explaining how thieves have already broken into his car 6 times before. You know, that makes Eddie here lucky number 7, and this time, he's taking matters into his own hands. According to the owner, the criminals always get away without being caught by the police, and that's why he decided to catch one for himself. Hearing this, Eddie panics and goes for the only option that he hasn't tried yet, pulling out a pistol from his bag and firing it directly at the window, but it ricochets off the glass and hits him straight in the leg. Okay, what an absolute f***ing disaster. Eddie here just put on a step-by-step demonstration of what it always time he's taking matters into his own hands. According to the owner, the criminals always get away without being caught by the police, and that's why he decided to catch one for himself. Hearing this, Eddie panics and goes for the only option that he hasn't tried yet, pulling out a pistol from his bag and firing it directly at the window, but it ricochets off the glass and hits him straight in the leg. Okay, what an absolute f***ing disaster. Eddie here just put on a step-by-step demonstration of how exactly not to react to this situation. The first thing that he needs to do now is assess the wound, and for once, he might actually get some good news. It looks like the bullet hit him in the back of the calf, about 2 or 3 inches below his knee, putting it in the region of his gastrocnemius muscle. Based on its dark color and the steady flow of the bleeding, it seems like the blood is coming from a vein, not an artery, making it a lot more manageable and not as immediately life-threatening. You actually don't want to go straight to a tourniquet for this kind of injury because prolonged use of one can cause more damage than necessary. Instead, he should take off his t-shirt and apply direct pressure to the wound, compressing the blood vessel to stop bleeding. If the blood continues to pool for more than 90 seconds, that's when he needs to use the sleeve of his sweatshirt to tear off a strip from his t-shirt to make a tourniquet, wrapping it tightly above the wound and using the sunglasses or a pen as an extra wine glass to twist it extra tight. You know what I mean. If he treats it properly and keeps the leg elevated, then he can get himself back in stable enough condition for long-term survival, but if not, then he'll most likely be dead in a few hours. So dealing with the wound, it should be his first priority, yeah. After that, it's back to figuring out how to get out of this car. I mean, he's already tried the tire iron, but there was another tool in the trunk that he completely overlooked, the scissor.
A wallet in pocket.
Okay, it's open.
I gotta get to the others. Julie! Let's stick together. I'll find him.
jack. These are designed to lift vehicles weighing over 1 ton, meaning that they can exert thousands of pounds of force if used correctly. Now, the trunk doors on most SUVs use hydraulic struts to open and shut, so what he needs to do here is wedge the jack in between the floor and the liftgate, and then slowly apply pressure upward and outward, forcing a mechanical failure and allowing him to pry open the door manually. Even if it's not enough to climb out, he might create an opening that allows him to communicate with the outside world and call for help. Alright, meat shields, it's time to talk about something serious. If you've ever been seriously hurt in an accident, car, work, or you could crucial, they pass terrain. Less is a company if you eat in more and a life-changing with our code show. Horrifically injured, Eddie falls down begging for help, but the man just keeps zapping him with the taser and acting like he hit the wrong button. The more blood that he loses, the more that he starts to panic, until he finally spots a woman passing by the car. Shouting as loud as he can, he's relieved when she turns to look at the window, but she's only using the tinted glass to touch up her lipstick. And even though they're only a few feet apart, the owner has the car so soundproofed that it's impossible for anyone outside to hear him scream. Annoyed, the man asks Eddie to stop bleeding on his car, clearly having fun at the thought of his pain. He tries using the string from his hoodie as a tourniquet, but there's nothing that he can do to slow down the blood loss. And he starts to worry that he isn't going to make it much longer. Begging him to call an ambulance, Eddie gets so desperate that he tries calling 911 himself, but he still can't get any signal. And the man explains in his sarcastically reassuring way that he'd already be unconscious if the wound was fatal. Instead, he just changes the subject right back to the car, determined to get his point across, whether the prisoner wants to listen or not. Calling him a psychopath, he defies the man one more time, but the owner sets him straight with another zap from the taser, and he finally decides to stop pushing his luck. Getting frustrated, the man says that his ultimate goal is to make Eddie here understand the consequences of his actions, and he isn't going to stop until he's truly sorry for what he's done. By now, he's lost so much blood that he's starting to lose consciousness, and as the man launches into a detailed explanation of his entire life story, he takes the very last sip of his water before finally passing out from his injuries. But the truth is that this nightmare is just beginning. Several hours later, Eddie here eventually wakes up to the sound of rain hitting the sunroof. It looks like he survived his injuries, but what's more surprising is that someone bandaged him up while he was asleep. As he starts coming back to his senses, he remembers that it's been a while since he had any water to drink. But the only bottle that he had with him is completely dry. Oh, he's desperately hungry too, and it seems like the nearby billboard advertising a giant bacon cheeseburger was put there just to taunt him. But for now, he'll have to get by with whatever scraps that he can find. Okay, so now this is interesting. This guy clearly enjoys watching Eddie suffer, but he also just saved his life, which shows that he has a deeper goal in mind. Since he's buckling in for a long stay, the first thing that he needs to consider is how long it's likely to take before anyone notices that he's gone. Right now, it's the weekend, and since no one's expecting him to clock in at work on Monday, the earliest that anyone will probably notice is most likely Wednesday afternoon, when he's supposed to pick his daughter up from school. Meaning that he could be stuck here for at least 5 days or more if the old man doesn't kill him first. Now, with that being said, we know from the survival rule of 3 that you can only make it for about 3 days without water, so figuring out how to get some is the next logical step. As rain hits the windows and the moisture from his breath builds up inside, it's going to cause condensation on the interior glass. I'd wait until the morning just before sunrise when the most condensation had built up, wipe all of the windows down with a piece of fabric and wring it out into a bottle or even straight into his mouth. Using this method, he might only recover between 10 and 50 milliliters per day, but it could be enough to extend his survival time. Now, if by chance he happens to have a plastic bag in his backpack, then he can actually use the materials that he has on hand to create an improvised solar still. First, I'd soak one of the socks in sweat and exhaled breath, then place it into his emptied out backpack and stretch a plastic layer over the opening with a small hole in the middle to form a bowl shape. After that, he can tear the bottom off of his empty bottle to make a cup, place it under the hole, and put the whole contraption in direct sunlight. As the sunlight heats the moisture source, vapor rises and condenses on the bag and then drips back down into the cup, allowing him to potentially collect another 20 to 50 milliliters of water per day, and giving
investigators have nothing more to share at this time.
What is happening? Where's this go?
Giving him something productive to work on until the next confrontation. It isn't until the next morning when he hears from the owner again, who picks up the phone himself when Eddie refuses to answer, snidely remarking that he could have done that at any time. Frustrated, he agrees to listen to whatever the man says as long as he gives him some water, and the owner happily takes him up on the deal, immediately launching right back into another long-winded story about his life. Eddie here pretends to listen for as long as he can, but cuts him off just as he's getting to the part where two men approached him and his daughter outside of their new apartment. Furious, the owner zaps him with another jolt from the taser, but when he still won't calm down, he starts cranking up the air conditioning to the highest setting and blasting Swedish polka music as loud as possible on an endless loop. At this point, he's clearly trolling him just for the laughs, and Eddie here tries to pretend like it isn't getting to him for as long as he can. But as the hours drag on, and with no end to the yodeling, he finally breaks down and starts begging him to shut it off. Ignoring his pleas for mercy, the owner doesn't even try to contact him again until much later that night. But now that Eddie is ready to cooperate, he finally shuts off the AC without saying another word, leaving him to wonder what fresh horrors he's going to cook up next. Now it's Sunday morning, meaning that Eddie's been trapped for over a day and a half. The rain is still pouring down from outside the SUV, but inside it's as dry as a desert, and desperate for any form of hydration, he decides to gather some homemade lemonade straight from the source. He's not quite desperate enough to drink it yet, so first he goes back to chipping away at the back door, but his best efforts aren't even making a dent, and that bottle is calling his name with every minute that goes by. Sometime later, the old man calls back and mentions that he looks terrible down there, but the oddly specific way that he phrases it makes Eddie realize that he must be nearby, and looking up, he spots the man watching him from a balcony just a few blocks away. Trying to rationalize with him, he says that the man will feel guilty if he dies, but the owner seriously doubts it, showing just how little he cares by cracking open a bag of chips. As William points out, it's hard to argue that killing is wrong when he was the one packing a gun, but he insists that it was just for his own protection. This brings up something that the two of them can both agree on, that the police can't do enough to keep the neighborhood safe, but the owner fails to see how this gives him anything in common with a low-life criminal. Despite their wildly different financial situations, right now they're both in a similar position, because William here is dying from prostate cancer with just a few months to live. That's why he decided to set the trap, wanting to see some real consequences for once instead of just leaving it up to the so-called justice system. Okay, now it all makes sense. The owner here must have watched too many Saw movies because, like he's been saying from the very beginning, the goal isn't to make Eddie suffer, it's to teach him a lesson and make him understand the true consequences of his actions. Yet despite knowing this, Eddie keeps trying to argue with him, even though the man has made it perfectly clear that he doesn't care about his perspective. In his mind, he's right, Eddie's wrong, and nothing's going to change that. So instead of antagonizing him, what he needs to do is start playing along. The reason why it would be better to go with this strategy comes down to basic human psychology and behavioral principles. Although he's incredibly wealthy, the constant break-ins with no help from law enforcement have left the owner feeling powerless. But now that he has Eddie to torment, this finally restores his damaged sense of control. When he tells these long and detailed stories about his past, he's subconsciously reinforcing his own internal narrative. And the feeling that you're being listened to or understood triggers release of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that sends reward signals through the brain. So by letting him talk and feeding into that sense of control, not only can he buy himself more time and avoid unnecessary punishments, but he's also subliminally manipulating William on a newer chemical level, which could pay off if it gets him to let his guard down. Now, earlier he interrupted William just as he was telling a story about a time when he and his daughter were involved in an armed robbery. But if he had just stayed quiet and listened to the story instead, then there might have been a way to spin what happened to his advantage. The story behind that event is pretty much the entire reason why William is doing this, and it seems like the criminals responsible for it were never caught. Being a local criminal himself, Eddie here could pretend like he's heard of the perpetrators and offer to lead William to them instead in exchange for his safety. I mean, it's a long shot, but if he frames it extremely carefully, the old man might just take the bait.
As the mutilations appear to have been committed at the same time. The Sheriff's Department advises all ranchers to control their property, heavily armed, and report...
What's going on? What are they doing to us? Can I use this? Jam that lock. Yes, we're trapped here too. Let's stay together. Oh, son of... Can I use this? All right. it's gotta be close. Oh, I ain't dying like this. Clear enough for now. Better than nothing. It's much too quiet. They can't be far.
Aw, don't split. I ain't had my fun yet.
Oh, what's this?
Your brain like an ice cream.
And all he needs is one opportunity to escape. Offering him a deal, the owner says that in some less forgiving countries, repeat offenders are punished by cutting off 4 of their fingers. So he wants Eddie here to give him his social security number, and if it's his first time committing a crime, then he'll let him go. But if not, then he'll have to give up those fingers before he can leave the car. Knowing exactly what the man will find, Eddie refuses the offer, arguing that it's still not justice. To him, the system put him in a position where his only choice was to live a life of crime. with laws that were made for the rich to abuse and to keep the poor in a constant state of struggle. Still, the owner insists that the rules work the same way for everyone. It's just that he chose the right path and became successful, while people like Eddie here are always looking for someone else to blame. It's clear that they're not seeing eye to eye, but he didn't trap this guy in a car just to argue with him about society, and now that they've reached another deadlock, it's right back to more non-stop yodeling until Eddie here remembers who's in charge. Night falls again, with no end to the music, but just when it seems like things couldn't get any worse, the owner starts blasting the heat on the maximum setting, turning the vehicle into a sauna with an endless supply of water right outside the glass. Reaching his most desperate point yet, he pulls out the yellow bottle and gets ready to take a sip, but it's still too disgusting for him to stomach. Disappointed, the owner calls and says that he was looking forward to watching him drink it, but he still has plenty of time to make him break. This time the finger deal is off the table, but he promises to turn off the heat and provide him with some water if Eddie tells him his personal information. He's well aware that it's a trap, but he won't make it much longer without something to drink, so reluctantly, he finally tells the owner his full name and social security number. Even then, he still won't give him any water until he says please. And laughing, he reveals that there's been a bottle under the passenger seat this whole time. Grabbing it, Eddie immediately chugs the whole thing down, and the owner leaves him alone for another night. Okay, Eddie here just made a huge mistake. Chugging the entire bottle of water in one shot was the biggest waste of resources that you could possibly imagine, and he's going to regret it as soon as he realizes how much longer it could have lasted. The bottle looked similar to the ones used by the brand Voss, so we can estimate that it contained about 500 milliliters or 6.9 ounces of cold water. According to the experts, the bare minimum amount of water needed to avoid dehydration in survival conditions is about 250 milliliters per day, so about half the bottle. Now, it might seem like drinking more than that couldn't hurt, right? Wrong. You see, chugging all 500 milliliters at once actually exceeded what he was even capable of using at the time, and it all comes down to how your body absorbs water. The small intestine actually absorbs water gradually over time and only as much as it needs, but if you drink more than your body can use, you'll just sweat or pee it out. So when you're severely dehydrated, you actually want to drink small, slow sips, giving your body time to balance out and replenish those intracellular fluids more effectively. In the end, the net hydration that he achieved by drinking the entire bottle was actually less than the full 500 milliliters. But if he would have split the bottle, then it could have lasted him like 2 full days, and if he was really smart, he could have made it last even longer than that. You can actually go as low as 100 milliliters per day and still remain semi-functional, and in the most severe scenarios, survivalists have used extreme rationing to extend their supplies for as long as biologically possible. Theoretically, Eddie here could subsist on the verge of death with only 50 milliliters every 2 or 3 days, extending his survival time to as long as a month with just 1 bottle. By chugging the entire bottle, not only did he waste his resources, but he gave up a powerful bargaining chip and put himself right back at the owner's mercy. So next time he needs to ration any supplies that he gets for as long as possible and start thinking about long-term survival instead. Eddie's just trying to get some rest when he feels something in his jacket pocket, and that's when he makes the most soul-crushing discovery yet. One of the lottery tickets that he never finished scratching was a winner for $500, meaning that he had the money all along. And if he'd only realized it sooner, then he would have never been in this position in the first place. Seeing him laugh, the owner calls to find out what's so funny, and Eddie here confesses that he's finally seen the error of his ways, genuinely admitting that it was wrong to steal regardless of circumstances in his life. For a moment, the man goes quiet, but even after hearing him apologize, he still says that he doesn't feel sorry for Eddie at all, although he awards him with a cookie for his good behavior, as he races to grab it from the guy that position in the first place. He wasted his resources, but he gave up a powerful bargaining chip and put himself right back at the owner's mercy. So next time he needs to ration any supplies that he gets for as long as possible and start thinking about long-term survival instead. Eddie's just trying to get some rest when he feels something in his jacket pocket, and that's when he makes the most soul-crushing discovery yet. One of the lottery tickets that he never finished scratching was a winner for $500, meaning that he had the money all along. And if he'd only realized it sooner, then he would have have never been in this position in the first place. Seeing him laugh, the owner calls to find out what's so funny, and Eddie here confesses that he's finally seen the error of his ways, genuinely admitting that it was wrong to steal regardless of circumstances in his life. For a moment, the man goes quiet, but even after hearing him apologize, he still says that he doesn't feel sorry for Eddie at all, although he awards him with a cookie for his good behavior. As he races to grab it from the glove box, he notices the first weakness that the owner here just seemed to overlook: an exposed fuse box situated at the back of the compartment. Just then, the man receives a call from the hospital informing him that one of his patients has just gone into labor, and overhearing the conversation through the car speakers, Eddie realizes that this might be his chance. Waiting until he's sure that the coast is clear, he quickly jumps into the front seat and pulls open the service panel, snapping a picture with his phone so that he can get a better look. It is a little difficult to get a good angle, but he's finally able to reach the safety switch with the tip of his finger, only to snap his nail in half when he tries to pull against it. Suddenly, the owner sends a jolt of electricity through his body after catching him on the camera, forcing Eddie to put his hands up and move away from the panel, but he's not ready to give up just yet. The following morning, once he's finally alone again, he goes back to secretly trying the switch with his feet so that the owner can't see what he's doing, but it's still no use. Another rainstorm starts, making him realize that he is getting dehydrated again, and this time he climbs into the trunk and grabs the bottle of his own piss, pinching his nose as he disgustingly chugs it all the way down. Okay, ew, you see what happens? This is exactly why spacing out his water supply was so important. Now he has to resort to drinking the forbidden Gatorade Bear Grylls style. The only difference is, that guy's a millionaire with a TV show and he's still trapped in some deranged boomer's SUV. I mean, we've all seen the infamous clip, right? But is there any situation where opening your own emergency lemonade stand would actually help? Unfortunately, the answer is maybe, but it all depends on the circumstances. So the room temperature yellow snow here contains about 95% water and 5% salts, toxins, and like other bad stuff. If it's the first time you're going during the dehydration cycle, then you might be looking at about 50 to 100 milliliters of reabsorbable water, enough to get you through another day. But if you've already been dehydrated for a while, then it's going to contain too much salt and actually force your kidneys to use more water, causing you to become even more dehydrated faster. So if I were Eddie here, then I would have tried.
The Sheriff's Department says Maria Flores, a native of Uvalde, was last seen near the town of Newt. Her vehicle was recently discovered abandoned, with officials reporting no signs of foul play. Authorities are hopeful that the expanded search in nearby communities of Harlow and Chinatown will unearth the lead. Family and friends are urging anyone with information regarding her disappearance to please come forward. Personal belongings linked to a missing...
This'll work. Slow down. I need to stay quiet. Oh, what's this? What is this? Yes. What do we have here?
any other hydration obtaining methods that we mentioned before, and leave this for an absolute last resort. Now, the situation isn't all bad because he's also made an important discovery: the fuse box under the dashboard. He can't work on it without getting zapped because the owner says that he's always watching, but logically, we know that can't be true. Based on the phone call he received earlier, we can guess that he's a doctor or like an OBGYN or something, and tomorrow is Monday, so if he keeps regular office hours, then he has to go clock in. I mean, a typical doctor's work schedule would be absolutely slammed first thing on a Monday, so if I were Eddie, then I would wait till about 9 or 9:30 a.m. when he was most likely busy at work and make a very sketchy move, like covering one of the cameras to see if William reacts. If he can't draw a response, then there's a chance that he's too busy at work to catch the cameras, and during that window, I would grab the tire iron from the trunk, smash open the glove box, and try to reach the reset switch by hand. I mean, he'll need good luck and good timing to get it right, but if everything goes according to plan, then it just might be his ticket out of there. Hours later, when the streetlights come on, there's still no contact from the owner, but that's when Eddie gets another idea. Reaching for the push-button start, he presses it several times without expecting anything to happen, but to his surprise, the car actually turns on. Relieved, he jumps behind the wheel, puts it in gear, and starts driving out of the parking lot, unable to believe his good luck. But just as he's about to reach the exit, the owner suddenly slams on the brakes, laughing at him for thinking that it was actually going to work. Taking over, he pulls the truck into the road and starts driving it around the city, forcing Eddie to witness the crimes that are taking place on every corner. Eventually, they come to a nicer neighborhood, but he points out that even those houses have security cameras and bars on the windows, and it's all because of criminals just like him. After making his point, the owner steps on the gas and starts whipping through the streets at almost 100 miles per hour, toying with him as they barely avoid one collision after another, until finally he brings them to a stop as they turn down a dark alley where they spot two criminals mugging an innocent victim. Now, Eddie here does not like where this is going, as one of the robbers steps out to threaten them, and the owner rockets the car forward without a moment's hesitation, brutally crushing the man's skull under the tires. Terrified, his partner runs for his life with the truck chasing after him, firing backwards into the windshield until he's able to dive out of the way, but he quickly runs out of space and ends up trapped against a locked gate, with the owner slowly crushing him as Eddie begs for his life, making 2 down with 3 more to go. Now, the shock of what just happened finally puts Eddie over the edge, but the owner here is about to take that expression literally. Turning into a parking garage, he speeds up the ramp until they finally reach the very top floor, hurtling towards the edge before suddenly slamming on the brakes at the last second, and causing Eddie to get knocked out again as his head collides with the dashboard. Okay, it looks like officially just got real. Now, the old man's whole point is that the police of the city can't do anything to stop crime, but what he's just done is about to put that theory to the test. He's forgotten that a major part of why the crimes go unsolved is that the criminals are able to blend in with the chaos, but this flashy, one-of-a-kind SUV sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, he's just raced across the city drawing all kinds of attention, most likely passing by dozens of traffic cameras and security cameras on commercial buildings. On top of that, he actually left a witness at the scene. He's potentially started a countdown until he's eventually caught, so for Eddie, this means playing along and continuing to stall him is the best strategy. Now, with that being said, after this, it's probably safe to assume that the owner's not letting Eddie go when he's done, so he still has to keep working on an escape plan. He's already spent several hours trying to activate the reset switch physically, but there's another way that he might be able to do it using the tools that he has on hand. If he happens to have a phone or like a vape charger, he can strip it down using his teeth to obtain copper wire, then remove the battery from his vape and connect one wire to each terminal. From there, he can take the other ends of the wire, shove them up near the fuse box, and attempt to tap near both fuse blades at the same time, causing a short that bypasses the fuses entirely and possibly trips a reset in the locking mechanism. Of course, he'd have to do it all while the owner wasn't paying attention, but at this point, anything is worth a try. It's already the next morning when he finally wakes up again, and the owner here is excited to tell him even more bad news. While he was asleep, he says that he found out about his ex-wife and their daughter Sarah, and pretending to be a social worker, he told the family that Eddie would pick the girl up from school today. Before he's even realized where they're going, they arrive outside of the school just as the kids are getting out. And sure enough, there's his daughter getting ready to scooter home, already expecting that her dad is not going to show up. Following her, he speeds by just as she's crossing the road, tormenting Eddie as he gets closer and closer, but at the last moment he swerves to the side and leaves the girl alone. Mentally broken, Eddie sits there in silence as they continue driving late into the night, until hours later, he just finally snaps. He jumps up and starts ripping out all the cameras, fighting through the jolts of electricity until he's able to take down every single one. Now that he has some privacy, he sends his daughter a voice message, apologizing for all of the times that he failed her as a father, and saying how he always loved her more than anything.
I have to get out of here. This looks like some kind of lockpick.
Stick with me.
Thank God. I wonder where this goes.
I can open doors with this.
No.
Over here.
Let's stay close.
What's this? I gotta get to the others.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I gotta be more quiet. Maybe I can open those doors. I gotta find a way out of here. Yes. A shortcut.
Keeping this. Worth trying.
This door has to lead out of here.
Damn it.
Open it. Hey, they're coming. Oh, shit.
What's coming?
This is for your own good.
We'll get this sorted out, Grandpa. Don't you worry. Shake it off. Come on.
Wanna play a hide? I might be saving you for.
Else in the whole world. He's heartbroken that they might never see each other again, but hopes that the message might go through if his phone somehow connects to a signal. Somewhere on the far outskirts of the city, the truck finally comes to a stop in an isolated parking lot with just one other car already posted up. Watching nervously through the glass, he sees an old man climb out of the vehicle and slowly approach the window, cracking it just to introduce himself enough before zapping him into submission. This is the old man who's been tormenting him for the last 4 days, and handing him some heavy-duty zip ties, he forces Eddie to cuff himself to a steel hook. Once he's followed the instructions, William here places a bag full of sinister-looking tools into the back seat, and gets inside to finally confront his prisoner face to face. He's just as as talkative in person as he was on the phone. He wants to gloat a little bit about how superior he is to him, roasting the guy for being such a loser as he sits there chowing down on his bag of gummy bears. Knowing that he hasn't eaten in days, he spills some on the dashboard just to watch him gobble them up like a pathetic game of Hungry Hungry Hippos, and turns on some music as they set out for one last drive. Okay, now, if the only thing we're focused on is that bag of tools in the back seat, then things are looking pretty bad for Eddie here. But if he had prepared himself better leading up to this meeting, then there's actually a way that he might have turned around this entire situation. After successfully taking out the cameras, the old man had no way of seeing what was going on inside the vehicle. So during this time, Eddie could have worked on any strategy that he wanted to, so why not try playing dead? Yeah, I know, it's a long shot, but after the severe series of jolts that he received while taking the cameras down, he might be able to fool the old man into thinking that he suffered a cardiac arrest. What would give him away is if the old man looked through the window and set off the taser, but we can actually work around this. The tasers seem to work through wires embedded in the seats, but if he can break the contact between his skin and the conductive material, then he can insulate himself from the shock. If it were me, I'd grab the rubber floor mats that he's been using to occasionally keep himself warm and place as many layers as I could between my back and the seat. Then I'd wait until the old man was about to get in the car and just lie there pretending to be dead. Blech. As long as there's no close contact between his skin and the seat, zapping him wouldn't really cause a reaction, which might confuse the old man enough to carelessly open the door, and at that moment, that's when Eddie could jump him and try to fight his way out. Now that he's allowed himself to be zip-tied, escaping is going to be a lot more complicated, but Eddie here still has a few more tricks up his sleeve. Taking them deep into the countryside, the man admits that teaching him a lesson was never actually that important, and really he just wanted to torment whatever poor criminal was dumb enough to fall for his trap. Basically, it all comes down to Eddie here stealing from the wrong car at the wrong time. Realizing that cooperating won't help anyone, he starts looking for a way to get under the man's skin, and notices that he's wearing a bracelet from his daughter, Emma. When he brings it up, the owner slams on the brakes, bashing his head against the dashboard, and seeing that it's working, he keeps pushing it to make him even more upset. It's enough to distract him, while Eddie here secretly starts reaching for the reset switch, sending him off on another long-winded speech about how his daughter was killed during a robbery, and ever since then he's wanted revenge against the criminals who force everyone else to live in fear. Now that he knows the truth, Eddie here points out that the old man isn't as morally superior as he pretends to be. After all, he's the one who built the trap, took him prisoner, and killed 2 people, so if anything, he's actually like 10 times worse. But when he mentions what the man's daughter would think, he tricks him into slamming on the brakes a few more times, just enough for Eddie to finally loosen up that reset switch, causing the truck to lose power just as they're speeding towards a bend in the road, as the vehicle barrels over the side of a cliff, and in the chaos he accidentally fires a shot into the bulletproof glass, just barely missing Eddie as it ricochets around and hits the old man straight in the back. Flipping end over end, it finally comes to a stop at the very bottom of the mountain, luckily landing right side up, and Eddie here is the first to regain consciousness. But as he's struggling to get free, the old man wakes up and reaches for the blicky. Pulling on his zip ties, he gets loose just in time to fight back, finally getting a chance to give William here the beatdown that he deserves. But just when he's about to kill him, he's stopped by a phone call from his daughter. Worried, the girl asks if everything is alright, reminding him that he's supposed to pick her up after school. He sees the engine starting to go up in flames, but now he's more determined to survive than ever, and reassuring her that he'll be alright, he promises that he's going to be there no matter what it takes. Turning to the old man, Eddie tries convincing him to open up the doors, but he only smiles and says that he had fun before finally succumbing to his injuries. This means that he'll have to look for another way out, and as the flames keep getting higher and higher, he climbs into the trunk to get away from the heat, where he finds an old sledgehammer in the man's bag of tools. Looking around, he realizes that the glass was badly damaged in the accident. He starts smashing against it over and over again until he's finally able to open up a small hole. It's still not enough to get out of there, and by now the flames have almost reached the back seat. But using every ounce of strength that he has left, he manages to break all the way through at the last possible second, escaping just as the fire engulfs the entire car. Getting to his feet, he looks back at the flaming wreckage with a sigh of relief and staggers up to the roadside, leaving the the old man's body behind. His phone is completely dead, and he's trapped in the middle of nowhere, so all that he can do is wait until a helpful man in a pickup truck finally passes by. Hitching a ride back to the city, he goes straight to the mechanic with the money from his lottery ticket, but now it's taking too long for them to get his van from the back lot. Desperate not to disappoint his kid, he decides to just sell the van to the mechanics after all, and uses some of the money to buy a little girl's bike that's been sitting there at the shop, surprising her just as she's starting to think that he wasn't going to show up. In the end, that makes 3 down with 2 survivors, and Eddie here has finally learned to be a better dad. But I guess this is why it's still true when they say, if you can't do the time, then do not do the crime. Freaking Locked. Dude, you got Bill Skarsgård, Anthony Hopkins in one freaking movie? God damn. The star power is off the charts. And, I was a little worried when the movie began with like freaking 10 studio logos. Usually a weird sign, but this movie actually snapped. And I'm proud of everyone involved. Good job. Great movie. And I tried my best to figure out some scenarios about what to do in a locked car, but you guys have to let me know if you would have done anything differently. Let me know down in the comments what you come up with, and thank you so much for watching. Also, leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day!
If you were trapped in a real-life horror movie and hunted down by a family of zombies, what would you do? Every movie villain is waiting to be unleashed, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the horrifying monsters in the cabin in the woods. These students are about to destroy the entire world. They're driving out to their friend's cabin for a trip, but when Jules here checks the GPS for directions, she discovers the house doesn't exist on the map. It's strange, but they shrug it off as Marty here explains that going off the grid is actually a good thing. Nobody will be able to find them, and that means they're free to party as hard as they want. But he doesn't realize that this is going to backfire. Driving deeper into the wilderness, the group finally arrives at their destination, and they all get out of the camper to see the cabin. It's older than they expected, but when they open the door to look inside, they find the interior has been completely renovated. Moving into his room, Holden here gets himself settled and puts his stuff down when he notices something disturbing. On the dresser is a painting of hunters butchering a sheep, and horrified, the man decides to take it down. Looking back at the wall, he's surprised to see a window that peeks straight into Dana's room, but she doesn't notice him at all. It's a one-way mirror, and he's got a front row seat to see her undress. Conflicted, Holden feels too guilty to keep watching and slaps the wall, getting her to stop. He gathers the others to show them the transparent mirror, and they can't believe a place like this would have one. Curtis here suggests they should check the other rooms too, and the rest of them leave, but Dana here stays behind. Seeing how nervous the girl is, Holden offers to switch rooms with her, and she gladly accepts the deal. The man packs his things and leaves her alone in the room, but as Dana here starts to cover the mirror with a blanket, she's got no idea that she's still being watched. Okay, nothing about this is a good idea. Going on vacation with the God of Thunder is bound to be an epic weekend, but there were too many signs that should have told them to stay home. First of all, this group discovered that their destination is not even mapped by satellites, and that's not as normal as you might think. If there's no GPS data of this area, then it either doesn't have a registered address, is built in a place that's too remote, or someone requested that the satellite information be removed. The good thing is, we actually know enough to deduce which of these reasons is most likely. Now, judging from the time of day, this road trip couldn't have taken longer than 4 to 5 hours, which means they probably traveled less than 200 miles. If they managed to get there in this old RV, then the cabin is accessible enough to be mapped by GPS, so that can't be the reason. Secondly, the group actually stopped for gas on the way, where this man here told them that the house was called the Buckner Place, and it's been sold to a lot of previous owners before them. If the place has been listed for sale, then it definitely would have a registered address. That leaves us with the most likely option that this cabin was intentionally removed from satellite mapping, which is sketchy as hell. And when you combine that with what we've discovered inside, it's not surprising. When this guy took down the painting, he found a one-way mirror, which has absolutely no business being here. But the freaky thing is, the wooden frame looks a lot newer than the rest of the wall. Someone had this recently installed, and that makes this so much creepier. Now, if we have good reason to believe that this place has been removed from satellite mapping, then the mirror might be used for interrogation or execution. If I were in this situation, I would be really suspicious of Thor here, because the cabin actually belongs to his cousin. Since his family owns the place, then Curtis here probably knew all about the mirror. Already the signs point to some seriously f***ed up things happening in this house, and I would go looking around for other clues that help confirm my suspicions. If I find weird things like cameras or bloodied weapons, then I'd quietly round up the friends I trust and drive off with the RV before anything bad happens. Meanwhile, inside a massive surveillance room, someone is spying on the students, and they have no idea that there are dozens of hidden cameras throughout the entire cabin. That's when the scientist comes walking in and asks the man for approval to drug the blonde woman and increase her libido. She explains that they've secretly laced the blonde's hair dye with a chemical that lowers her IQ, and it will help make sure that every single student dies tonight. It's the perfect setup, and everything is going according to their secret plan. That night, the group throws a party and they're all having a good time, when Marty here decides they should all play Truth or Dare. The redhead chooses to take a dare, but all of a sudden a floor hatch pops open behind them. The group walks over to it, curious to know what's going on, and they all go down to check it out. Marty here lights a lantern to illuminate the room, and the group is weirded out by the massive collection of strange antiques left behind. That's when Dana here finds a diary belonging to Anna Buckner, whose family used to live in this cabin. Skimming through it, she reads out the final entry that says, whoever recites the Latin phrases written on the page will restore the dead. Marty here warns her not to do that, but he suddenly hears a voice insist she reads the phrases aloud. He's the only one who notices, and the girl recites the words, sealing their fate. In the forest, a hand bursts out of the ground as the Buckner family rises from the grave, and these zombies are out for blood. Okay, everything about this was a bad idea. These students had plenty of signs to tell them that something is wrong here, but they're ignoring all of them. First of all, there's no natural reason that it would swing open with this much force all on its own. Curtis here suggests that the wind must have blown it open, but this door leads to the basement, which is completely sealed off from the outside, so this wouldn't make any sense. For a normal door, it would take an 80km/minute wind to burst open like this, but outside, there's barely even a light breeze. Now, what's worrying about this is that these aren't just a bunch of dumb kids, because earlier, this girl wanted to pack her book on the aftermath of the cultural political climate for fun reading. These are intelligent students, but there's no evidence of critical thinking in this group at all except for Marty, and it's a clear sign that something is really wrong here. Now, as for the objects in this basement, there's no way of knowing that all these items are cursed, but if there was one thing we can be pretty confident about, it's that you should never read a spell out loud. Latin is a dead language, but one of the ways it's still used today are in religious incantations as well as the occult. And if you've seen any horror movie ever, reading something in Latin is going to seriously ruin your day. If there was any sign that occult rituals were being practiced in this house, we should leave immediately. Now, one of the easiest ways to figure this out is by how the basement might smell. For centuries, witches have used herbs to make potions to protect themselves from demons and cast spells on people. If there are any herbs like St. John's wort or sage placed on the cabin's windowsills, then there's a good chance that the previous owners of the house were practicing witchcraft. These are very recognizable fragrances for dark rituals, and if the students saw any one of these signs, it wouldn't take long for them to realize that they should leave this place immediately. Now, not all fragrances are meant for evil, but the only way you're going to find the ones that won't get you killed is if you use Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription that allows you to custom order a deluxe sample from over 600 brands and get it delivered to your doorstep. They have perfumes and colognes perfect for anyone and any occasion. Every month, you can pick out what you really want to receive, so there are no surprises, and get to choose from designer fragrances like Arquiste, Michel Germain, Mercedes-Benz, Prada, Gucci, Versace, and more. You'll get a 30-day supply of a travel-sized vial of fragrance to try before committing to a full bottle. With Scentbird, you can get a small collection of high-end fragrances for just $16. With my code, it will be only $11 for your first month. It's easy to sign up, and Scentbird will guide you through a quiz to help you find your perfect match and provide descriptions of fragrance classifications and notes. That way your perfume doesn't end up in a graveyard of rejected and unused bottles like this one. Simply choose a 3, 6, or 12-month gift subscription, and Scentbird will send it directly to your recipient's email with the choice to skip any month for free. And since it's near the holiday season, it's a great gift option. Check out Scentbird's perfume and cologne gift sets filled with fan-favorite scents and designer names you know and love for a fraction of the price. The products keep coming month after month, and now Scentbird is available in Canada. But why not treat yourself too? Click the link in the description and use my coupon code for 30% off your first month at Scentbird. Thank you, Scentbird, for sponsoring this video. The students go back upstairs to hang out, but the blonde starts flirting with the stoner, which is something she would never do. It's suspicious, and he tells them he thinks there's something wrong with everyone, but nobody believes him. Getting aroused, Curtis here decides to ditch the group for some alone time with his girlfriend. Leading her to the door, he tells the stoner to share his theory with the others while he gets laid. But this just confirms to Marty that there's more to this cabin than they realize, and he's completely right. Later, the boyfriend and the blonde are out in the forest, but they have no idea that a team of supervisors are watching their every move and are ready for the next step of their evil plan. They release a chemical mist of pheromones, and the two college students decide to do it right there on the forest floor. They start making out, when a knife suddenly comes out of nowhere and pierces straight through the girl's hand. She screams in pain, startling her boyfriend as they look up to realize they've just been attacked by a zombie. The boyfriend tackles the monster and knocks it to the ground. Worried, he runs over to his girlfriend to check on her, but another creature attacks him from behind. He fights off the zombie and pulls a garden shear out of his back, but then a third monster walks into view. This giant creature swings a bear trap at the boyfriend and hits him in the head, knocking the man out. Panicking, the girlfriend tries running past the zombie, but it catches her with a bear trap and pulls the woman towards him. The creature picks her up, and she can do nothing as the monsters hold a hacksaw to her neck, forcing her boyfriend to watch as they kill her. That's one sacrifice down, with 4 more to go. Okay, this was a horrible way to die, but we have to cut these guys a little slack here. None of them are making good choices tonight, but it's because they're being controlled by these supervisors who masterminded this entire situation. Somehow, they lured them all the way up to this isolated cabin, and it's probably the reason these students couldn't get their GPS working on the drive here. Then, they infused the girl's blonde hair dye with chemicals that lowered her ability to think for herself. They literally turned this A+ student into a dumb blonde, and with all this working against them, there's not a lot they can do to outsmart the situation. For perspective, we can see here on his monitor that the temperature of the forest is 64 degrees, but look at what this girl is wearing. These clothes are not enough to keep her warm in this climate, but instead of asking for her boyfriend's jacket, she's taking more of her clothes off. If the mist of pheromones has compromised our thinking to the point that we can't even tell how cold we are, then this is not a fair fight, and we're going to need to use the most basic survival tools we have if we want to get out of this alive. In a life or death situation, your body experiences what is known as the fight, flight, or freeze response, and it's our go-to biological defense mechanism even for the stupidest of people. Now, Curtis used these instincts to fight, which was not the right decision, but there's one saving grace here, because they revealed a key strategy in beating them. He's proven that these creatures can be knocked over easily by running into them, but the most important observation is that they took forever to get back up. When this third zombie came out to attack them, the other 2 zombies that Curtis knocked down were nowhere to be seen for over 30 seconds. These guys are slow as hell, and it tells us that once they're on the ground, we'll have plenty of time to run away. Now, we also have enough information to suggest that these creatures aren't smart enough to plan an ambush, because if they were, they would have realized that it would have given them the clear advantage. The fact that they came out one at a time means they're pretty dumb, and since we're still being affected by the chemicals, that makes this a level playing field. The good news is, we don't have to overthink the situation in order to escape. Of these 3 zombie brothers, the most dangerous is this guy with the chain because it's a ranged weapon, but his weakness is that he needs to reel it back in to recast it. All we would need to do is evade his attack once by hiding behind a tree, and when he's reeling it back in, we run straight for him and knock the guy over just like the other 2. Even though these supervisors have lowered our IQs, our basic survival instinct should be enough to get us out of here alive if we use the zombies' weaknesses against them. At the cabin, Marty decides to go out for a walk, but when he looks up to the sky, he notices that there aren't any stars. The man interprets it as a sign that something bad is going to happen and never notices a zombie sneaking up behind him. That's when the boyfriend bumps into Marty, telling him to get back indoors, and they both run for the cabin, knocking the zombie to the ground. Inside, the others check on Curtis here, asking him where his girlfriend went, and the man tells them she's gone. He knows they need to leave if they want to survive, but the redhead insists they need to find their friend first, and opens the door, revealing a giant zombie standing outside. The group stares in shock at the monster, and it suddenly throws something into the redhead's arms. Catching it, she realizes it's the blonde woman's head and screams in terror before the others run for the door and lock it shut, keeping the monster from getting into the cabin. Everyone is terrified, and Curtis tells them they need to barricade all the entryways into the cabin and stick together to stay safe, but the supervisors have other plans. One of them presses a button and releases pheromones into the cabin as Curtis here walks right into their trap. Turning around, he tells the others that he's changed his mind, insisting they should split up to cover more ground, and the group agrees with his terrible new plan. Suddenly, a zombie punches through the wall behind them, and the man goes to fight the creature off while the others run back into their rooms, with no idea they're about to be trapped inside. Marty quickly closes the window and knocks over a lamp. But then he notices something strange. Inspecting the light, he discovers a tiny spy camera and realizes someone has been watching them. The stoner thinks he must be on a reality TV show, when a monster suddenly grabs him through the window. He desperately reaches for something to protect himself, but gets dragged outside and thrown to the ground. Getting back to his feet, he tries to run away, but the zombie throws its knife straight into his back, knocking him to the ground. Marty can't do anything as the monster grabs him from behind and drags the man into its grave. That's 2 sacrifices down, with 3 more to go. Okay, this is getting bad. Marty was the only student to realize that they're being watched with cameras, and that information could have been extremely useful to the rest of the group. This would have helped them realize that whatever is going on in this cabin, they've been trapped here for someone's entertainment, and this would give them more strategies to work with in how they beat the scenario. Instead of only thinking about beating the monsters, we would be able to expand our tactics to fight against whoever's watching us and destroy all the cameras we can find. This would force the supervisors to respond in real time, and the more we interfere with their plans, the more they'll have to adapt to the situation. Forcing your enemy to think on the fly is going to make it easier for them to make a mistake, and this might give us more opportunities to escape. Now, as dangerous as these monsters are, the biggest threat to the students are these pheromone traps. Curtis had a great idea to stick together and barricade the entrances, and it's definitely the smartest thing to do. These monsters are slow, which means we should have enough time to organize ourselves, and there's enough furniture in this cabin to prop against the windows and doors. As far as we know, there are only 5 zombies to kill, and since we have a weapon, this is definitely a beatable scenario under normal circumstances. The problem is that with the press of a single button, the supervisors were able to change Curtis's mind and completely destroy his strategy. There are probably hidden vents everywhere throughout the building, and since these pheromones are odorless, nobody seems to realize that it's even there. This is a huge weakness, and we have to work with a lowered IQ until we can get out of this cabin. Now, all of these students have decided it's best to split up and go to their rooms, but one of the most effective low IQ survival strategies we have is cowardice. When you put your own life before everyone else's, it makes your decision making a lot easier because you don't have to weigh your options. We don't have to outsmart the situation as long as we have a meat shield at our disposal. So with this in mind, I would agree with the plan, but follow either Holden or Curtis into their room and refuse to leave. If a zombie comes to attack us, then they can do all the work trying to stop it, and this gives me a higher chance of surviving without even having to use my brain. In Dana's room, a monster starts breaking through the window and the girl backs away in terror. That's when her friend Holden smashes the one-way mirror open and she climbs through to the other side, falling on the floor. Together, the 2 survivors move his bed and block the hole in the glass frame, discovering a trap door that was hidden underneath it. Dana here decides to open it up and finds out it leads to the basement. Lowering a lamp through the hatch, they see there's nothing waiting for them and jump down to safety. The girl shines the light around the room and finds a collection of tools on a table. That's when she remembers the diary and realizes this is the same room where the Buckner family was murdered. Dana is terrified that they'll be killed here too, but her friend reassures her they'll survive and tells the girl to look for an exit. Suddenly, a bear trap swings into his back, tearing it open, and he gets yanked into the hatch by a zombie. The girl runs in to save him and pulls him down to the floor, leaving the zombie hanging halfway through the door. Grabbing a crowbar, she jams it straight into the monster's face, successfully killing it. With the zombie now dead, Dana has interfered with the supervisor's plan, and one of them presses a button that electrifies the knife, making the girl drop it. That's when Curtis runs through the doors behind them, telling his friends to follow him out of the basement. The group leaves the cellar and they all run for the camper van, hoping to make their escape. The survivors get inside, but have no idea that their plan is about to fall apart. They drive through the tunnel trying to make their escape, but that's when the cave suddenly explodes and the rock walls start collapsing. Panicking, the group reverses the RV and backs out at full speed, narrowly avoiding being crushed under the debris. The students stare at the tunnel in shock, realizing that their only way out of here has been closed off forever. The friends regroup near this ravine, where they can see another cliff on the other side, and Curtis here thinks he might be able to jump it. Revving up the dirt bike they brought with them, he reassures the others that he'll get help and prepares to cross the gap. The man drives off the ravine, and it looks like he might make it, but he suddenly crashes into an invisible force field. His body is sent tumbling into the cliffs below, and that's now 3 sacrifices down, with 2 more to go. Okay, this is completely unfair. They finally escaped the cabin, which means that they aren't under the influence of pheromones anymore, and finally had the freedom to think clearly about this horrifying scenario. Curtis was confident that he would be able to jump across the canyon, and he actually looked like he was going to make it, but this was still a horrible idea. If we look at this realistically, the distance between the two sides looked like it might be close to 10 RVs across. And since the average camper is around 30 feet long, that could mean the gap is about 330 feet. Now, as scary as that sounds, it's not an impossible feat. In 2008, Australian motorcyclist Robbie Madison managed to jump a gap of 351 feet, but that was with the help of a massive ramp to gain airtime and a specialized bike, not to mention years of professional training. For this to even be possible, Curtis here would have needed to be going over 90 miles per hour off of a ramp at least 30 feet tall, with plenty of room on the other side to slow down. Now, calculating the projectile motion of an object is not easy because there are so many different variables at work, but you don't have to be a genius mathematician to figure out that no matter how you look at this, it's guaranteed to end very badly for him. In the meantime, the rest of us should try to climb up the side of the mountain above the tunnel, and we can see here that there might be a place to find a path over. Even in the worst case scenario, we will just find that the force field blocks our path and we'll have to climb back down with more information than before. Now, this stunt clearly didn't work, and their only other idea was to head back to the cabin, but there was still a great way they could have escaped using this strategy. If there's one thing you can count on, it's that this family of zombies will continue to follow you wherever you go until you're dead. With that in mind, the smartest decision might be to just wait for them to appear and run them down with the camper van. These creatures are undead, so we might never be able to kill them, but running them over would maim their bodies to the point that there will be no way for them to continue hunting us. Knowing your horror movie tropes is going to be a real lifesaver here, because a strategy like this can work if you know how different types of monsters will behave, and that information helps us develop the correct strategy to take them out. Dana figured this out by accident, because she stabbed the zombie in the face and it stopped moving completely. What she didn't seem to notice though was that the supervisors electrified the knife and removed it from her hands. For some reason, she didn't register that this happened, but it likely means that anything we take from this cabin can't be trusted because it can be sabotaged whenever we need it most. This is all the more reason that instead of fighting back with knives and coffee mugs, if we arm ourselves with a 10-ton camper and collection of horror movie tropes, we just might have a chance at getting out of this alive. With no other choice, the survivors get into the RV and head back to the cabin. Holden here thinks they might be able to find another way out, but the girl argues that it's hopeless. Suddenly, a massive knife bursts out of the man's throat, and Dana is horrified to see that a zombie has snuck inside the vehicle. That's 4 sacrifices down, with only 1 more to go. Her friend falls into the steering wheel dead, and the camper van crashes into a lake. They sink into the water, but she manages to escape the RV, making her the last remaining survivor. Dana pulls herself out of the water and collapses onto the pier, but just as she thinks she's safe, the giant zombie steps onto the other end of the dock, and the monster walks over to her fully intent on getting its revenge. The creature swings its bear trap into the air to kill the girl, but the chain suddenly gets caught. Marty is still alive, and he pulls the monster back, rescuing Dana at the last second. Both survivors are relieved to see each other, but the zombie isn't done with them yet. The girl rips out a wooden board and hits the creature, knocking it into the water. Their friends quickly run into the forest, with Marty leading them back towards the cabin. He opens up a hidden trap door he found, and the survivors go through, but they'll soon discover the horrifying truth about why they were brought here. Inside, the woman is startled when a hand taps her foot, and she sees the zombie that attacked Marty on the ground, chopped into pieces. He opens a hidden panel on the floor, revealing an elevator, and tells her the zombies were sent to attack them, but they can ride it back to escape. With no good options left, the redhead drops down inside, and Marty tampers with the fuse box, jump-starting the elevator. It takes them deeper underground, but suddenly comes to a stop. That's when the man turns around to see a ballerina trapped inside of a glass box, and finds that her entire face is one giant mouth. Behind them, a man steps forward with saw blades sticking out of his face, and he's holding a strange puzzle, just like the one they found in the basement. That's when the woman realizes they chose how they would die, and this was a trap all along. Angry, the girl starts hitting the glass wall, surrounded by a collection of the most terrifying monsters, and they're all about to be set free. Okay, this is terrifying. Being hunted by a family of zombies is one thing, but discovering an entire army of monsters underground is something else entirely. Now the good news is that for the moment, we are trapped in a glass box, which means we're safe. But it was definitely a mistake coming down here in the first place. Logically, if we already know that the environment was designed to kill us, then whatever we think we're going to find waiting for us below is not going to help us survive. It's walking right into the lion's den, and it only means there will be more ways for the supervisors to control our movements. If it were me, I would block these entrances so that more monsters wouldn't be able to come up, and we can continue trying to find ways to escape the force field. It's important to realize that we were still able to enter the area even though the force field was active during the day. There also isn't any curvature in this wall either, which means it's not a dome. That's an extremely important observation, because it means that there still might be a way to call for help. Before risking my life in this death trap, I would use their own environment against them and start burning down the cabin. We already know that there's a lantern in the house, and since this place is made out of wood, it should be able to catch fire without too much difficulty. The smoke will rise into the air, and judging from the scenery, it's very likely that we're close to a national park, which would have rangers and possibly even watchtowers to keep an eye out. If we can build a fire for the smoke to alert anyone nearby, it might be enough to get the authorities to investigate the fire and send help. Even though the tunnel has collapsed, it's not uncommon to have helicopters dispatched to access difficult-to-reach areas. The other advantage is that all the antiques in the basement will be destroyed, which means there would be no possible way to summon any additional monsters by accident. Now, the truth is, starting a fire wouldn't just alert people from the outside, but it would also alert the supervisors who are controlling the place. This would completely destroy their plans, and it might even be enough to send someone up to assess the situation or clean up pieces of evidence before the authorities come. If we can expect this to happen, and we've already located an elevator where they would come up from, we could set an ambush and attack them. Luring the supervisors up is a lot better than us going down into their territory, and if we can capture one, we'll have access to the information we need to escape with our lives. Meanwhile, in the surveillance room, the supervisors are panicking. They don't know where the survivors went, but that's when this man finds the college students on the camera feeds inside the facility. The supervisor orders his men to finish them off, but instructs them to make sure that Marty is taken out first. Inside the elevator, the door suddenly opens and a guard comes in, pointing his gun at the survivors. He orders Dana to step out immediately, but the zombie's chopped off arm grabs his leg, distracting him. Seizing the opportunity, the friend shoved the man against the wall and he falls to the floor. Marty takes the guard's gun along with the zombie's knife, and together they walk out of the elevator. That's when they hear footsteps marching towards them and realize guards have been sent to hunt them down. They run into one of the control rooms, taking cover inside from the gunmen who start firing at them. Dana here notices a red button labeled System Purge and slams it down, dooming everyone in the building. The guards stop firing as they hear something coming up behind the elevator doors, and the monsters suddenly come out to attack them. The whole facility goes on red alert, and more creatures escape their cells to hunt down their captors. That's when a monster bat crashes through the window, and the students run out of there as fast as they can. They find their exit blocked by a horde of zombies, and they have no choice but to climb into a hole in the wall, finding that it leads them into this massive underground chamber. Against the walls are these tablets, each with a unique figure on it, and Dana realizes the characters represent everyone who went to the cabin. It must mean the people running the secret operation wanted them to die as part of a ritual, and that's when this woman suddenly enters the room, taking the students by surprise. She explains the tablets represent 5 different roles: the whore, the athlete, the scholar, the fool, and the virgin. Each person assigned to these roles must be killed in that specific order by monsters, but the virgin is the only victim who is allowed to live. Dana realizes that must be her role, and Marty asks what will happen if they aren't killed. She explains the world will be destroyed by creatures called the Ancient Ones, but all the other rituals their organization set up have already failed. The room suddenly starts shaking as the woman desperately tells Marty that he needs to die or else the entire human race will be destroyed. And realizing what's at stake, Dana raises the gun at her friend. Turning around, Marty can't believe she would betray him, and the girl is about to pull the trigger when a werewolf suddenly attacks her from behind. She drops the gun to the floor, and Marty dives at the weapon. He wrestles with the lady for the gun, taking it out of her grip, and shoots the werewolf, scaring the creature away. That's when the woman attacks him, knocking Marty to the ground, and the two fight over the gun. She's about to finish him off, but suddenly a zombie swings an axe straight into her skull, killing her. Seeing his opportunity, Marty here kicks the dead body off the platform and dooms the entire planet. With the end of the world approaching, the two friends sit and wait as the facility collapses around them and the Ancient Ones wake up. That's now 7.9 billion down with no more to go.
But what do you think? How would you beat Cabin in the Woods? Let me know with a comment, and thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Please check them out at the link below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
If you were trapped in a haunted manor for one night, but were hunted down by bloodthirsty ghosts, what would you do? There's no way to escape, so I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Death Manor in Deadstream. This man is about to have the scariest night of his life. Sean here is a disgraced YouTuber who fell from fame after a terrible controversy that took away his sponsors and revenue. 6 months later, the man manages to retrieve his channel, posting this video to welcome his viewers back after his hiatus. He tells the audience that over his 7 years of making content, he's faced nearly every fear that is humanly possible, except for his fear of ghosts. For this reason, he's going to livestream himself spending a night at the infamous Death Manor that's known to be haunted by restless spirits. Besides his recording equipment, all he's going to bring are a handful of tools to protect them from the supernatural, and makes it clear to his viewers that he has given himself a rule. If he spots anything unusual, Sean needs to check it out, or else he won't make any money from the livestream. On the night of his stream, he welcomes the audience to Death Manor, the most haunted house in the United States. Before heading inside, he shows off a bracelet that switches the camera with the flick of a wrist, and moves over to his car. He removes the spark plugs from his vehicle, and throws them into the forest so he can't easily escape. This is the first terrible idea of many, and it's about to get a whole lot worse. Sean approaches the manor, explaining that it was built in 1880 by a Mormon pioneer for his daughter called Mildred, but then she tragically died. Supposedly this cursed the house, and 11 more people would die in it before it was boarded up. He also mentions that a body was found here a few years ago and had been eaten alive by rats. Suddenly, he spots a scarecrow that scares the hell out of him, and after he recovers, the man sets up an infrared camera that can detect anything that moves outside. Okay, this guy is an idiot. Sean here has come to one of the most haunted houses in America. Not very many people know where this place is, and he also doesn't have a crew to help him film. To make matters worse, he's exploring an abandoned building that's over a century old, and all these factors combined makes it a very dumb thing to do. It should go without saying that when exploring abandoned buildings in the dead of night, sabotaging your own car would be a huge mistake. Even if we aren't taking the ghost thing seriously, this place is crumbling apart, and he could easily fall through the floor or have part of the ceiling collapse on him. If it were me, I would have made sure to have a friend wait by the car and refuse to let me leave, unless there's a legitimate emergency, in which case, he would be able to drive me to the hospital. While we might get some flack from trolls about needing to use a safety team, the truth is that it's standard practice when you're filming anything that might involve a dangerous stunt or location. We're also in the middle of the woods in Utah, and there are so many things that could go wrong in this situation that sabotaging your only vehicle and taking zero safety precautions is basically a death wish. Now, it's important to point out that even if there aren't any accidents during his night here, the man's ghost hunting kit doesn't make very much sense. He's hunting ghosts, not vampires, so items like a silver dagger and garlic seem to be the wrong tools to do the job. At least he brought holy water, a crucifix, and salt. But if he had studied up on his lore, he would realize that ghosts are supposed to be the wandering souls of dead humans who have been trapped in the physical realm. They're often people who have suffered a great amount of pain in their lives and choose to haunt others so they can experience the same pain. The man does not even understand the threat that he's supposed to be facing, and if I knew for a fact they were out there and wanted to prepare for an encounter with one, I'd replace the garlic with a Bible. Ghosts are proof that an afterlife actually exists, and that means it's possible we can help release the ghosts from their prison by reading them scriptures of repentance and forgiveness. It might sound ridiculous, but so does being haunted by ghosts, and if we aren't fighting them with rules of the supernatural, then we're going to be completely outmatched. With that said, I also wouldn't be limiting myself to a single tradition either. We don't know for sure which religion will work the best, or what tools will be most effective, which is why I'd borrow from as many traditions around the world as possible. He could have easily done some research into how different cultures protect themselves from ghosts, and this would have helped him figure out which tools he needed for the job to make sure he was safe. Sean checks the front entrance to find it barricaded with barbed wire. He decides to look for a different way in and spots another barricaded door. The man uses a crowbar to pry off the wood and gets it open, finding himself inside of the Death Manor. Creeped out, he attaches a padlock to the door and locks it, dropping the key down a floor vent where he can never take it back. Continuing through the house, he looks around and gets scared by the coat rack before apologizing for swearing on camera. That's when he finds his creepy red sign on the wall that says "Help me." Sean calms himself down, insisting that it's just paint, and checks the comments to find out what his audience thinks. He makes his way to the kitchen and takes a look around to find a huge butcher knife hanging on the wall. It's terrifying, and the man tells his audience that he's going to monitor 3 rooms in this house that were all proven to be haunted. He introduces his viewers to the master bedroom and climbs onto a chair to attach an infrared camera to the wall. Sean explains there have been 2 separate incidents involving a spirit called the Corner Man. He reads a note left left behind by a former guest that states he kept having dreams of a very tall man in the corner of his room, whispering the pond water is still, and then a year later, the guest died in his sleep. Sean reads another story from 1995, where a group of paranormal investigators came in and took a photo of this ghostly figure. Freaked out, the man runs out of the master bedroom and responds to the comments, insisting he won't put the spirits to rest. That's when he spots the staircase where Mildred died. Walking up, Sean tells his audience that the town didn't like the girl, so her father built a house in hopes that it might attract a husband for her, but it didn't work. He heads to the next room where there were reports of paranormal sightings, and explains that it used to be a nursery where 5 children had died. Opening the door, he finds the place completely wrecked and notices a curtain with a broken window. He goes over to check it out, discovering that it leads straight outside, and assumes someone must have tried to escape. The man then shows his viewers a video where a ghost hunter tries to convince his daughter to stay in the nursery, but she refuses, explaining that the ghost told her to get out. Moving on to the final haunted area, he enters a disgusting bathroom and tells his audience that another death happened in this worn-down bathtub. Pretending to stick his finger in, he pulls away and places another camera on the wall. He explains that ghost hunters were recording in this room and discovered an electronic voice phenomenon. Playing a video, he reveals that a ghostly voice can be heard saying the words "mama" and "pond water" in the background. It's extremely disturbing, and the live streamer has no idea what he's getting into. Okay, nothing's happened yet, but I'm already terrified, and that's why if it were me, I would have kept a hold of this crowbar. Even if it's useless against the supernatural, at least we'll feel a lot safer, because if I'm letting superstition get the better of me, then it seems pretty clear that this place is packed with ghosts. Now, based on what we've seen so far from this video here, it seems possible that using electronic voice phenomenon, or EVPs, to detect supernatural presence in the room would be a good idea. The problem with them, however, is that EVPs rely on bad microphones to pick up on really quiet sounds and distort the audio. It's also a human's natural tendency to notice patterns and then to assign subjective meaning to them. This is especially potent when the listener is influenced by the subtitles in the mix and expecting to find something meaningful. This is known as priming, where an initial stimulus such as telling someone they're about to hear something spooky will affect how someone reacts to a new stimulus, such as distorted audio. It's a psychological phenomenon that explains how Ouija boards work, since they not only have the slick surface that make it easy to move the ring around, but we expect it to do so without us manipulating it. The truth is that we make tiny unconscious movements that make it seem like it's moving all on its own, so you can very easily trick yourself into thinking ghosts are talking to you when you're really just talking to yourself. With that said, if we remain level-headed and keep superstition out of the equation, there are still a lot of other things we should be worried about finding that aren't related to ghosts at all. For starters, I would expect the chance you might encounter a junkie, considering how many dirty needles are littered here. We might also expect that wild animals are moving through the walls, so jumping at the slightest sound and assuming it's a ghost is misguided. As far as this video he was watching, there are a lot of natural causes that can easily explain everything we're seeing. For example, kids a long time ago died from mysterious illnesses that scientists didn't understand, and it happened pretty often, so 5 dead kids aren't necessarily because it's a haunted house. For the same reason, an elderly gentleman dying in his sleep isn't surprising, whether he claimed to have seen a ghost or not. Lastly, the little girl in this video who refused to go into the room knew they were looking for ghosts, and children are extremely impressionable because their understanding of reality is shaped by the information they get from adults. At this point, everything we found so far has a natural explanation, but soon enough, we'll see that not only are there actual ghosts here, but they're way more dangerous than we ever could have expected. Sean connects the stories together, explaining that both the cornerman and voice from the EVP mentioned the pond water was still, but his fans disagree with his conclusion. Continuing to reveal Mildred's story, he tells them she wrote romantic poems for 8 years about the love she never had until she met an American publisher. They wrote each other letters for years until something happened, and he won't reveal what it is until it's too late. That's when he opens another room up and explains that this will be his hideout for the night. There haven't been any paranormal sightings here, meaning that it should be safe. But that's when Sean spots a closet and decides to check for any ghosts inside. Quickly opening it up, he finds a strange marking on this wood canvas and throws it to the ground. The man picks up his equipment and finishes setting up the safe room by planting another camera. He opens up his bag and takes a swig of an energy drink while talking to his chat, and they demand he provoke the ghost or else they'll stop watching. Sean insists they calm down and whips out a wheel of stupid things to do for the night. He spins the wheel and it lands on a seance. The live streamer leaves the room to try it out while explaining the end of Mildred's story. He tells the viewers that she and her lover exchanged letters for 2 years until the man asked her to marry and move to Boston. But 2 days before she was set to leave, her lover died. Mildred suffered from an intense heartbreak and she died the next day. He moves back to the nursery, telling his viewers that the souls of everyone who died in this house are captured by Mildred so she can make a family out of their spirits. The man decides to peek under the bed, finding this creepy doll and placing it on a chair. Sean recites a ritual to the doll while looking around the room to see if anything will happen. Suddenly, he hears something hit the roof and sprints out of the nursery, heading back into his safe space. The viewers insist that it was nothing, but Sean admits that he felt a vibration in his chest during the ritual. He pranks the viewers pretending to be possessed, but he doesn't realize that this place will have the last laugh. Okay, this guy is not making good choices. He went into the one room where nothing bad ever happened, found a magic talisman on the wall, and tossed it on the ground without even stopping to do a quick Google search first. If he had looked up hand symbols and their meanings, he would have quickly found a blog post explaining the Hamza as a protective symbol used in Buddhism, Hinduism, and Hebrew cultures, being a symbol that dates back to ancient Mesopotamia. The man would have known that if it was doing anything, it was making him safer. He might still want to break it to ratchet up the tension and boost viewership, but at least he'd be informed of his risks. If, however, his goal is to not end up like the dead people he's talking about, he should probably just leave the Hamza alone. If he wanted to make his safe space even safer, he could have swept the ground like in Shinto, and then used a salt circle around the room to prevent the spirits from coming back inside. Then, he could pray over the area using his crucifix to add another layer of potential protection. He could have also copied the design of the Hamza after doing a little research, and held onto them so he could hang more of them up throughout the house later if he need to. Buddhism and Shintoism are tied together, which means if the Hamza works, then there might be a chance that other Buddhist and Shinto traditions will be effective as well. Now, I have to point out that taking matters into our own hands could be a very risky strategy. Rituals that influence the supernatural realm can be an incredibly useful tool if they actually work. But the problem is that most of us have no idea what the hell we're doing. If you're in the middle of trying to bind or ward off a dangerous supernatural entity and get something wrong in the process, the ghost isn't exactly going to take it easy on you. You're literally imposing restrictions on the entity against its will, and if we don't already have experience in the ritual to make sure we get it right, then it's more likely we're putting ourselves in even more danger. That's why the safest idea is to declare in each room of the house that we are not here to banish them or get in the way of what they want, as long as they grant us safe passage. If they insist on harming us, we can try using the tools we have to ward them off, but it's a much smarter approach to enter this place with respect, because otherwise, we're giving a ghost a good reason to hurt us. We obviously want to make sure the video is interesting, but we don't want to die in the process, so whatever we can do to keep the ghost around without us paying the price is going to be a strategy worth taking. He rambles to the audience while they complain that the stream is getting boring, but that's when the viewers begin sending photos of the quarterman outside his room. Checking the surveillance, he spots a white figure but doesn't believe it's real. Sean pulls out the recorded footage, visibly seeing a white figure walking into the bathroom. Terrified, Sean runs straight into the closet and hides under a blanket, telling his viewers that there's no way he'll head outside. He's too scared to leave his safe zone and confront the ghost. Seeing that his viewers disapprove, Sean decides to take a risk and appease his audience by going to where the ghost was and running back into his safe room. The man takes his protection gear and heads out to face the corner man. He points his flashlight around the hallway and finds the door which he can't remember opening. Suddenly, he hears footsteps behind him and turns around to see nothing there. Looking back at the door, he watches it move by itself. Sean rushes back to his safe room and barricades the door, screaming at the ghost to tell him why it's haunting him. Freaking out, he stomps on the weird hand symbol he found in the closet and breaks it, paranoid that it's attracting the spirits. Suddenly, the door starts opening and he screams in terror when he sees this woman in the hallway. She explains she's a huge fan of Sean's channel and followed him all the way here just to meet the live streamer. He questions how the girl managed to find his location, but tells her to keep it a secret in case more people discover where he's shooting. Suspicious, Sean tries to figure out if the girl has another motive, and Christy admits that she just wanted to say hi, but has experience in ghost hunting that might be of use to him. That's when he picks his bags up and decides to leave the manor. The woman insists that they stay, and the man checks his viewer count to see that the live stream is blowing up. Sean makes a pull to keep the girl around, with most of his viewers agreeing that Christy should tag along. He decides to make the night a tag team effort and hands her a camera to show Christy's POV. They slowly walk outside while Sean orders her to keep an eye on what's behind him. She suggests that they go to the master bedroom, and the man reluctantly agrees. They then walk downstairs towards the bedroom when suddenly Chrissy disappears. Okay, this is terrifying. We've seen a live-streamed proof across the internet that ghosts are real, making it clear that this house is haunted. Sean is in way over his head, and to make matters worse, this superfan has appeared out of nowhere. The girl supposedly figured out where he was and traveled all the way here just to say hi to him in a matter of hours. This is suspicious as hell, but if one thing's clear, it's that we need to be very careful with how we handle this situation. Chrissy here could very likely be insane, but being dismissive of the stalker girl in front of your audience and sending her off alone with no supervision is probably not going to end well. That's why if it were me, I'd keep my distance and never let her leave my line of sight. I don't want her doubling back and ambushing me with this meat cleaver later on. I should also add that to Sean's credit, giving her a camera was a smart move, as it gives him more information to work with. It is also good for boosting views. With that said, I would also have an ulterior motive for keeping her around that isn't just about maintaining appearances to our streaming viewers. We've already started encountering some terrifying paranormal activity, and the longer we stay here, the more clear clear it seems to be that something dangerous is haunting this place for real. All the tools we brought to protect ourselves might not be enough to prevent this from happening, and with this in mind, it's extremely useful to have someone else around, to make sure that we have a meat shield in front of us if our lives are on the line. Now there's another very strange detail that Sean didn't put enough consideration into, because the girl also said that she claimed to have experience in ghost hunting, and if it were me, I'd definitely want to know more. I'd ask about her experiences, what she found useful, and how long she'd been hunting ghosts. This serves a few purposes. Firstly, it would be better entertainment for the fans, but more importantly, it allows us to get more information from our superfan on whether or not she's made it up. By asking her questions about it, it gives us more of an opportunity to catch her in the lie. The more energy she has to put into expanding on her lie, the more stress she'll suffer and increases the chances for inconsistencies. If she isn't lying about it, that helps us too. She might be sitting on a really useful piece of information or have a special skill we can use to our advantage later when things start to get real. On top of that, it makes her feel valued and appreciated, which means she'll go further to help us in the future. If he had thought to do this, he could have gotten a more complete picture of his situation much earlier on and been able to see what happens next. Freaked out, Sean finds the girl in another corner of the room and scolds Chrissy for scaring him. They walk into the bedroom together and he looks around for something of interest, but that's when the girl screams, telling him that she heard something. He checks out the closet to see a tiny hole under the wall and breaks it apart, finding a secret staircase leading downstairs. They check it out and find an old cellar, where Chrissy discovers something strange. It's a wooden chest left underneath the stairs, and after rummaging inside, the ghost hunters discover a locked box. He checks another compartment to find a book written by Mildred Pratt, the same woman who this house was built for. To his disappointment, it's full of their poems, but that's when they spot a mummified animal on the ground. It freaks them out, and the ghost hunters go running back upstairs. In the bedroom, the viewers beg him to bring out the wheel again, which Sean happily accepts and pulls out of his backpack. He gives Chrissy the opportunity to spin it, and she flicks the arrow, but it lands between two choices, the EVP and spirit board panels. She suggests that they do both, and he reluctantly brings out a Ouija board and a cassette recorder along with these green lights. He orders the girl to put her hand on Mildred's book, asking her to talk with the spirits. Chrissy makes him recite a Latin phrase, and at first the man is resistant, but she convinces him to say it, insisting it's an offering of peace for those trapped in Mildred's house. As soon as they're finished reciting the chant, they hear a loud thud coming from the bathroom. The man is too terrified to investigate what made that sound, but when he takes a look at the chat, he sees everyone call him a wuss for not wanting to check it out. Sean decides to let his fan take a look and watches as she walks off. The man checks his monitoring device, but then he hears strange noises in his room and realizes that he needs to get out. Sean runs upstairs to look for his new partner and gets jump scared by the girl again. Furious, he questions how the girl knows where to hide and asks her if she arrived here before he did. She insists she didn't, but the man doesn't believe her, accusing her of being a stalker. Terrified, he makes it clear that he's going back to the safe room and she's not invited. Suddenly, Chrissy latches onto his neck, biting straight into the man's skin. Sean freaks out, pulling out a sharp piece of wood and defends himself. Opening his eyes, the man realizes that he's just killed the girl for his entire audience to see. Okay, this is super up. Sean here is trying to rebuild his viewer base, and instead, he accidentally commits manslaughter on camera. This has become an absolute disaster, but the truth is that it was completely avoidable. It would have been a lot better to have encouraged her to look around the house away from us, because it gives the audience more to watch without putting us directly in harm's way. This keeps her useful to us without needing to have her around. Someone who stalks you into a haunted house deep in the woods is not a mentally stable person, and we need to make sure we prevent her insanity from bubbling up while we're in the same room. If he had done this, the girl's death wouldn't be on his hands, and he could have continued his live stream blaming everything on the ghosts. Now, with all that said, the girl has been acting weird the entire time, so when she makes suggestions, we can't assume that she's working in our best interest. That's why earlier, when she asked us to repeat her Latin phrase, I would have told her I wanted to try my own strategy first, so that we don't bring out unforeseen consequences. Another thing we could do is use our audience and ask them in the chat thread to help us translate the Latin phrase that Chrissy wanted us to recite, just so I'm not accidentally saying something that makes things worse. Normally this wouldn't be an issue, but we have good reasons to be suspicious of her intentions. First of all, she seems really into the evil spirit's bad poetry, was offended when Sean called it bad writing, and also showed up out of nowhere right after the amulet of protection was broken. In a haunted house, that's exactly the kind of thing we can't afford to shrug off as coincidence, and we shouldn't trust this woman with anything. With this in mind, I try using an old samurai method of dealing with evil spirits. Now, the Mubyoshiru Samurai School swore by its effectiveness in the 16th century, and best of all, it's really easy and fast. When you believe you've encountered an evil spirit, you should first take a moment to clear your mind. Then you make a hand-washing gesture while chanting Hinte Sowaka 3 times. This was believed to force the spirit to show its true form. Finally, you push your hands out in front of you in a stopping motion with your pointer fingers and thumbs forming a triangle, banishing the evil spirit from your presence. If he had known to use this, then the spirit he released might have been banished, and he would have looked like a total badass in front of his livestream audience. Now, you might be thinking that reciting an ancient Japanese incantation to a Mormon ghost might be a complete waste of time, because they won't understand what we're saying. The problem with this thinking is that in the afterlife, there shouldn't be any strong attachment to a specific culture or religion, because they're now in a new realm that has a completely different set of rules. If something is effective in protecting you from a ghost, it should work regardless of where the ghost came from, because it's being applied to the rules of a world that has existed long before the human race has. Horrified, Sean runs back into the safe room and explains to his chat that there's been an accident, urging them to call the police to his location. After apologizing, he closes his laptop and walks outside to find that the girl's body has disappeared. Suddenly, something stops in the ceiling from above, and the man runs back to his safe room. He checks the hallway camera and spots the ghost of Mildred floating in the air. Freaking out, Sean runs to the closet looking at his chat to find an informational video from his fan. This kid explains that the wooden symbol he found in the closet is known as a hamsa, and it's a charm of protection from evil spirits used by most religions. Now, he's broken it, and the spirits have been let free inside the manor. The chat insists that the ghost would have attacked him already if it could, so he might have a chance to escape. Terrified, he decides to take a risk and walks back out while carefully checking his monitoring device. Suddenly, he's attacked by Mildred and she jumps on his back. The ghost then chokes the man and sticks her finger into his nose. Acting quickly, he slams her into the wall and they fall over before Sean throws the spirit down the staircase. The man rushes to escape, running over her body, and rips the grate off the floor to find the key to the padlock. But that's when he spots blood dripping onto his hand. Reaching up his nostril, he takes a torn-off nail out of his nose and tosses it away. The man realizes he needs to get out of here and pulls out a tiny key from its hiding spot, but figures out this one doesn't go into the padlock. Suddenly, he hears the thud in the distance and quickly picks up a stick as a weapon. But when he checks the other room, he sees that Mildred's body has disappeared. Running back, the man tries to kick this boarded door, but injures his foot. He checks the chat and sees that a viewer suggests he use his new key to open the small box he found. Sean tries it out, realizing that it fits, and finds a photo of Mildred, making him realize that Chrissy was actually the ghost this whole time. That's when he finds his rotten finger inside, and checks his chat for more advice. Someone tells him to pick up the rope and use it to climb down from the upstairs window, but suddenly he hears someone moving. That's when the man peeks around the chair and sees a ghost walking through the hallway. Freaked out, he sprints up the staircase and heads to the nursery to put his plan into action. He fixes the rope around the bedpost, but just as he's tying it around his waist, he spots a child under the blanket. It rushes towards him and the man sprints out of the room, falling onto the ground. He was pulled back by the rope, and Sean quickly unties himself before making his way over to the safe room. Entering the closet, he checks his chat and they insist that he leave, but the man tells them he'll wait for the police to arrive. Sean then finds another video from a fan, and she's translated the Latin he was speaking with Chrissy. The woman reveals he's been tricked, and the chant she made him do actually says, "I give thee my soul and forfeit my will." The video pans over to the fan's daughter, who explains that Mildred is trying to control the minds of those inside the house and make them crazy enough to do something they'll regret. That's when he hears someone call his name and removes a blanket to see Mildred's head right between his legs. The ghost then bites him, but he manages to fight her off and runs out of the room. He heads for the nursery, and with everything to lose, the man jumps out the window to escape the house. He gets back up and realizes his leg is injured. He looks at the wound to see that he's in bad shape. His viewers urge him to clean it, so he takes out the first aid kit and screams in agony while applying the medicine. Okay, this guy is screwed. He's being haunted by Mildred's spirit, who he surrendered his soul to. He probably broke a bone falling on the ground, and now he's stuck in the middle of the woods with no working car. It's a terrifying situation to be in, and if we can't escape quickly, we have basically no chance of survival. Unfortunately, he had the bright idea to lock himself inside and throw away the key. Now, if he had thought to keep his crowbar, he could have easily gone through that padlock, but since he didn't think to do that, his next best move would be to pick up something heavy to bash out these windows. If that doesn't work, a drop from 2 stories wouldn't have been a big deal if he had thought to take off all that heavy equipment and land with a proper parkour roll. It sounds crazy, but a skilled freerunner can survive a 28-foot drop using these falling techniques, so there was a chance he could literally have rolled away from the situation with minimal injury. The other option he has is duct taping the Hamza back together. We don't know if this would work, and there's a good chance it wouldn't do anything, but at this point, it's worth a shot. Now, another thing to consider is that he hasn't tested if the salt works in this ghost. If he brought enough of it, he could potentially use it to make barriers that the ghost can't cross. This might have given him an opening to attack it with the holy water, silver dagger, or even the meat cleaver. While it won't put her down for good, it might put her down long enough to fully trap her, or at the very least, give us enough space to then safely retreat. Putting these all together, before she attacked him in the hallway, he could have placed a line of salt and then stabbed her with the silver dagger. Then, after forming a circle of salt around her body to keep her contained, the man would have had enough time to take off his heavy equipment and used a parkour roll to safely land from the second-story window. Then, it's a simple matter of running like hell, and at this point, I think his sponsors will understand. Sean hears a noise from upstairs and decides to rush back into his car, but remembers that he left his spark plugs in the forest. The man looks around and finds them lying on the ground. That's when he sees another demonic spirit and runs out of the forest, falling over. Suddenly, a police officer calls his name and he jumps up to hug the man, telling him they need to leave now. The officer informs him that he's been watching his live stream and scolds him in a demonic voice for killing Chrissy. He's a ghost too, and Sean kicks him between the legs before rushing back to his car. Terrified, he tries to look outside, but realizes that he can't see a thing. That's when he attaches this night vision camera to a Slim Jim and pokes the device out of his car. He checks the monitor and spots the cops shaking wildly in the distance. He asks the chat for help when someone uploads a video of this old woman. She introduces herself as Hetty and explains that she used to live at the house as a nanny. The woman reveals that Mildred tried to attack her, and she created a ward that kept her from harming anybody else. That's when he switches cameras and sees the undead cop coming his way. Switching back, the woman explains he has to make a new Hamza, but to do that, he needs to sacrifice a piece of flesh. Suddenly, something shakes his car, and Sean realizes that he needs a weapon. Searching the trunk, the man grabs a potato gun, but gets distracted as a terrifying creature bangs on his window. He gets ready to fire, but the creature appears from behind and grabs him before Sean manages to escape its grip and get out of the car. Firing the potato gun through its chest, he blasts a hole through the creature, and its body slides down the barrel of the gun. He checks the tablet to see that the screen is completely cracked, and now he has no way of monitoring his surroundings. Terrified, Sean rushes back into the car, wondering how he managed to reach this point in his life. He decides to write a note down in Mildred's journal and finds a slip of paper with instructions for a ritual. The man reads another part of the journal, which repeats the phrase about pond water, and realizes that Mildred is creating ghosts, forcing them to memorize her poetry. Since her lover was a publisher and no one knew of her writing when she was alive, this is her attempt at creating an audience for her work. He takes another look at the ritual paper, knowing that he needs to translate the Latin to free his soul from this place and steal the ghost's power from her. With a plan in mind, Sean leaves the card, ready to take Mildred on once and for all. He runs back to the house, picking up this log, and breaks the door open. Heading inside, he grabs a stick and moves over to this chair to create himself a ghost hunting arsenal. He takes a silver knife to the stick, soaking it in the juices of the garlic, and creates a spear. Walking into the next room, he takes an empty syringe and fills it full of holy water, giving himself the perfect weapon to purge any evil spirits. Heading to the kitchen, he grabs the butcher knife and goes upstairs to face Mildred. That's when he hears a noise from a side door, but decides to head upstairs anyway. He grabs the bag and walks into a safe room, finding out that he's still streaming. Checking the chat, he sees that his viewers have translated the words on the ritual paper, but he hears a scream and starts his preparations to beat the spirit. Realizing that he might not make it, he apologizes to his viewers for all his past controversies, confessing that he's done some bad things in the past that he wants to move on from. Okay, at this point, I think I'd want to start praying to baby Jesus for forgiveness. This streamer is going to fight off a bunch of malicious ghosts and conduct a ritual to not only take back his soul, but claim all the power that Mildred has accumulated over the years. One wrong move will get this man killed and become a permanent resident of the Death Manor. It's terrifying, but there might be something else Sean can do to not only save his soul, but steal all of Mildred's power. Since he was cursed by saying the Latin phrase that Mildred made him chant, he might be able to break it by drinking holy water. The reason is that he knows based on both the ritual paper he found and what the old woman said that Mildred made a pact with the devil in order to gain power. If Satan is powering this mess in the first place, then a bottle of blessed water might be enough to protect us, just like a Catholic exorcist would use. With that said, trying to take her power by appealing to the devil is not totally unfounded. There are several folktales and stories across mythology that dictates making deals with the devil is a bad idea. Most famously in the story of Faust, where the main character almost gets dragged into hell. It was only thanks to literal divine intervention that he doesn't. And to be honest, I don't think Sean is the most pious person in the world. Regardless, Mildred and the ghosts prove the ritual works, so it isn't necessarily a bad idea to try. But there is another option he's forgetting. The old woman Hetty was able to create a Hamza that warded off the ghosts from entering his safe room, and it worked until he broke it. The woman was actually beginning to give instructions on how to create one before Sean was interrupted by the undead cop shaking the car. She explicitly states that all worthwhile counter vigils require a sacrifice of flesh, and since Mildred had one of her fingers amputated, it would be safe to assume that we'd have to sacrifice even more than that. Since Hetty was 15 years old when she made the original Hamza, it probably doesn't require too many things to create a new one, but having to remove 2 fingers is too heavy a cost. That's why if it were me, I'd have gone back to the original plan, which was to find the spark plugs and drive to the hospital. We already know where they are, and a sprinkling of holy water should scare that plant demon off. So as counterintuitive as it might seem, going to get them and installing them back into the car would take less time than traveling by foot to escape the forest. We need as much speed and protection as we can get, so getting the car working is our best and only chance for survival. The man readies his spear and calls out for Mildred to come get him, but nothing happens. He walks out into the hallway and recites some of her poems, hoping to get a reaction. He decides to open up the nursery, finding a small child facing the wall. Sean grabs a doll and tries to calm the kid down when suddenly he spots a disfigured creature attached to him. Terrified, he rushes outside, pouring the holy water on the ground. That's when he hears Mildred calling out his name, and the man urges her to come find him, checking his monitor to see the corner man right behind him. The man stabs his spear towards its location, but the ghost steals his weapon. It stabs the man, who tries using garlic to ward the creature off, and realizes it doesn't work. Terrified, he runs to the bathroom where he hears Chrissy's voice begging him for help. Suddenly, the light turns off, and he hears Mildred's voice asking him to meet someone. That's when the lights turn on, and Sean's eyes have glazed over. He's being possessed, and the man realizes he's in the disgusting bathtub, but can't stop himself from reciting that the pond water is still. He tilts forward into the water and comes to his senses, fighting against the possession. Slapping himself in the face, the man breaks out of his trance when a monster emerges from the bathtub and attacks him. Sean quickly comes up with a clever idea and stabs a syringe into its head, injecting it with holy water. He taunts the ghost, but then its head explodes onto his face, and that makes the streamer furious. Climbing out of the bathtub, he checks the monitor to find the hallway empty and throws the journal outside to bait Mildred. He checks the cameras again, and as soon as he sees the book move by itself, the man runs outside to cut off the spirit's hand. But that was his biggest mistake. Looking up at the ceiling, he sees the ghost waiting for him, and she attacks the man, smashing him against the ground. Sean spots the butcher knife and swings it right into the spirit's skull, killing her a second time. With the ghost dealt with, he attaches a camera to Mildred to make sure he can keep tabs on her once she gets back up. He crawls away into a safe room, and moments later, the ghost recovers from her wound. Getting to her feet, she picks up his cassette player and walks into the safe room, spotting the man sitting behind the desk. But that was her biggest mistake. The streamer steps out of the closet and hits her over the head with the chair. He drags her body over the Hamza, taping down her arms and covering her mouth before reciting the words to the ritual, but it doesn't work. Suddenly, she takes the tape off and hits Sean in the face, knocking him to the floor. The spirit sticks her finger into the man's nose before beating him up. Fighting back, he rips the tape off her mouth and tears the skin from her mouth. It's horrific, but he manages to push Mildred off of him and weighs her down with a cement block, making sure she can't easily chase after him. He crawls out of the room and heads for the exit, rolling downstairs to escape. It's clear to him that the ghost won't stop coming, and Sean decides to give up, thanking his viewers for all the support. Exhausted, he's startled when he finds the rotten finger from the box and remembers what the old woman told him. The ritual needs a sacrifice of flesh to complete, so Mildred must have cut hers off, meaning he has to do the same thing to claim back his soul. Noticing the ghost crawling towards him, he recites the ritual, and Mildred is dragged away by an unseen force, banished from the material plane. Sean has defeated Mildred, and he picks up his monitor, telling the viewers that they've beaten the Death Manor, but that was his biggest mistake. Suddenly, the other ghosts approach him, determined to get their revenge, and as horrifying as this is, he's learned a valuable lesson. Always bring a priest with you to a haunted house. But what do you think? How would you beat Deadstream? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day. If you were playing a deadly video game that caused you to die in real life, what would you do? Your friends are dying one by one, and this game is hiding a terrifying secret that you'll need to uncover. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the cursed video game and stay alive. This gamer has no idea he's going to get all of his friends killed. Loomis here is playing a prototype video game called Stay Alive, when his characters get pushed off a staircase and hooked onto a chandelier. With the game over, he calls his friend Hutch and tells his buddy about the game, asking him to come over for the night, but the man turns him down. That's when he hears a noise upstairs and goes to check it out, finding his roommates getting intimate. The man quickly leaves, with no idea that 10 people are going to be haunted by a cursed video game. Loomis tries to sleep, but later that night, he has nightmares about what happened in Stay Alive and wakes up. He tries to switch the light on, but realizes the power has been cut. The man walks downstairs with a lighter, but suddenly the ghost from the video game appears, and he quickly realizes he was just seeing things and heads for the kitchen. He takes a drink out of the fridge, still freaked out by the game, but as he's returning to his room, the the man hears a strange noise rumbling from behind him. That's when he sees a ghost and rushes upstairs to find his roommate's bedroom, finding them gruesomely murdered. The man is horrified, but before he can call for help, he's pulled away and killed in the exact same way as his character in Stay Alive. That makes 3 victims down, with 7 more to go. Later, the stressed office worker Hutch gets ready to face his boss, having forgotten to submit a report while wishing his coworker a happy birthday. Entering the office, his boss informs him that he's put in 100 hours of work on their current project, and Hutch apologizes for not helping out enough, but insists that he'll finish off the Marino report as soon as possible. That's when his boss sighs, telling him to take a seat, and explain that Hutch has been hired for only one reason. They begin discussing Silent Hill, and Hutch here asks his boss for a day off. He agrees to let the office worker take a break, and they discuss tactics in order to beat the boss in the game, revealing that it's easier to beat the terrifying ghost boss without a hyper blaster. That's when Hutch's coworker walks in to inform him that he has a call waiting for him, and he picks up the phone, learning that his friend Loomis died the night before. At the funeral, Hutch pays his respects. That's when he notices this blonde woman Abigail taking a snapshot, and after the service, she approaches him to take another photo. She comments that out of everyone here, he looks the saddest, and admits that she came here since her friend was Loomis's roommate. They're interrupted when the dead friend's sister walks up to Hutch and hands him her brother's bag. It's full of his old video games, but they have no idea this memento is going to get several people murdered. Later, Hutch walks into this bar and meets up with his goth friend, October, who apologizes for his loss. Her brother Phineas heads behind the counter, commenting that the man's life has gone downhill, and October scolds him while the guy insists that he means well. The girl asks if the police know any more details about what happened to Loomis, and finds out that his roommates were also murdered. Changing topics, they question what was in the bag, and the friend takes out a CD case labeled Stay Alive. Hutch mentions that Loomis was beta testing the game the same night that he died, and Phineas here figures that they should try it out in memory of their dead friend. Later that day, Hutch is at his apartment when he hears a sound from outside of his kitchen and peeks through the store before his friend Swink surprises him. He invites himself in and apologizes for his loss, but Hutch admits that it's good to hang out with his friends to forget about his problems. Abigail walks in and introduces herself to the group. They start sitting around the couch to begin a game of Stay Alive, not realizing that this is about to get nearly all of them killed. Okay, this group of friends are hardcore gamers, but they're about to have to beat the biggest boss of their lives. Hutch here has just had a friend die in a terrible and gruesome death, and is about to play the game that his friend was playing right before he died. This might seem like a nice tribute to his friend, who was also a gamer, but it's actually about to be the worst decision he's ever made. All of this could have easily been avoided if Hutch and the police had done more thinking before he was given the game at all. Now, Loomis died in a way that makes no logical sense. He and his roommates have all died in extremely gruesome ways, and at first glance, it could be viewed as a horrifying home invasion. However, if you think about it, there's no motivation for these people to be murdered. Nothing in the house has been stolen, and to the police and Hutch's knowledge, Loomis and his roommates have no enemies that would have wanted them dead. They could have been the mark of a serial killer, but outside of being in their 20s, these people fit no clear type. The reason behind serial killers' motivations vary, but usually their marks have something in common, like gender that links the murders together. The only clear thing that they had in common was having played the game right beforehand, which would make it significant evidence to the investigation. The police could have easily figured this out by searching the house for evidence and finding the video game on exactly where Loomis left it. Loomis died in the game only moments before he died in real life and left the game on his screen to investigate a noise he heard upstairs. Finding Loomis in the same position as he was in the game would then make the creators of the game suspect number 1, and the game would have to remain in police custody. The other thing is that the chain markings on Loomis's neck would reveal that he was dragged by the neck with a chain and hung from the ceiling above the staircase, and there's no way that this could have happened unless there was a supernatural force involved. The chain is hanging from the ceiling when Loomis is killed, and if the serial killer was a real person, they would have had to have it hung before they killed him, and he would have seen the chain only moments before when he ran up the staircase. The chain markings on Loomis's neck would also reveal that he was dragged first, and then hung, which would make him hanging from the ceiling. The murderer would have had to have gotten a ladder after they killed him, placed it on the staircase, and hung his lifeless deadweight body after the fact. But this also wouldn't quite match up with the crime scene evidence, because his neck was snapped by the hanging rather than him being killed then hung. In the case that police still don't hold on to the game instead of playing it, if it were me, I would put it away where it can never be played. No one knows there's something strange about this game, but I'd want to put away my dead friend's belongings to grieve, as it would be a reminder of Loomis's death. It's not the most amazing strategy to beat the demonic creature that attacked him, but it does mean all 5 of us won't be cursed until we play. The group start up their games, being shown a strange opening credit screen displaying this notebook. Confused, Hutch wonders why the game won't begin. That's when Abigail suggests the text might be a hint, and they're supposed to read it into the microphone. Hutch reads the text out loud loud, watching as it disappears off of the screen. The group is still confused by the introductory sequence, but continues to read the text out loud as Hutch's boss Miller does the same in his office. They make it onto a character creation screen and choose their outfits, hearing a voiceover that lectures them, saying that they've made a mistake by playing this game, and informs the group that speaking to the player has assured their deaths. The voice mentions a location called the Guru's Plantation that was created by Elizabeth Bathory, and October comments that she's heard of it before from her grandmother. The voiceover continues to explain that young girls were kidnapped and taken to this plantation where they were murdered so gruesomely that all accounts were hidden from public records. Now, the evil inside the Guru's Plantation has returned, and it's their job to find out the truth behind this mansion, but they need to stay alive. In-game, Hutch walks forward before all their controllers start shaking, and they see this creepy ghost approaching him. He suggests that someone deal with it, but Swink here refuses to take action. With no other choice, Hutch's character takes out a crossbow and shoots the ghost multiple times before it finally dies. They're given a rose which they can use to escape from the ghost and continue playing the game, riding through this mausoleum full of enemies they take out with ease. Suddenly, the boss's character arrives at a tomb and is separated from the rest of the group as they find themselves inside a house. Opening up a wardrobe, they enter a secret room and find this painting of Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Underneath the painting, they discover the same book of text from the game's introduction sequence. Phineas contacts Miller through his headset, making sure that he's okay, and the boss tells him he's fine. The man is exploring the underground complex, but his controller has started vibrating. It's a sign something is here, and he drops a rose. Looking around, Miller realizes he's in a murder dungeon, but suddenly Elizabeth Bathory jumps at him from behind. There's nothing he can do to fight back, and she stabs his character in the throat. He tells the others what happened to him and that he reached the room through a secret tunnel, when suddenly he hears a noise from outside his office. The man thinks it must have been the night watchman, assuming his imagination was playing tricks on him, with no idea he's going to be murdered. Okay, without thinking, these gamers have started playing this video game that should still be a part of an active murder investigation. They still haven't realized yet that this game is the reason that Hutch's friend Loomis died, and they've just signed their own death warrants. Hutch's boss has died in the game, and is now ignoring the warning signs that his life is in immediate danger. He's freaked out and thinks that something is wrong, but because it doesn't make any sense that dying in a video game would affect your real life, he ignores the creepy signs and heads home without anything to protect him. However, if it were me, and I was worried something might happen to me, I would prepare myself to survive being attacked with a pair of scissors. The boss didn't notice, but there was clearly a woman's shadow that passed by that looked identical to Elizabeth Bathory from Stay Alive. This was the same woman who in the game attacked Miller while he was distracted, and he had no way to protect himself. He was caught off guard, and that was why she was able to stab him in the neck. If he had been more prepared, he could have survived the attack in the game. Avoiding being stabbed is also a possibility in reality, so rather than leave my body exposed, I would look for things in the office to protect myself against a pair of scissors, like a metal trash can lid or a computer monitor to use as a shield. I would also look for a set of cutlery in the kitchen to fight back against her. At this point, the boss knows that Hutch's friend died, and this was the last video game he was playing, so I would use everything I know about the game to help survive the murderer's attack. The woman's attacks would be relentless until she killed me, so I would only do this until I'm able to break away from her and find roses outside, or in a grocery store or flower shop. In the game, the roses act as a supernatural shield against her, and if she is here in real life, the rules of the game should also translate over into reality, and the only thing that the players know that can protect them against the murderer is to surround themselves with roses. Then, once it's been confirmed that there's a supernatural being exactly like the one in the video game, I would force Hutch and his friends to destroy the physical copy of the game. There's nothing stopping the players from breaking the game and saving themselves from the ghost's hold over them. The way the ghost works isn't totally clear, but the players can't die in the game if the game is broken. After surviving, I would track down how Loomis got his hands on the game by sifting through his trash for mail, and find the return address for the developers who sent it to him to stop them from ever creating another copy of the game again. Swinkier mentions that the longer someone plays a video game, the more a player will view the game world as a reality with consequences that can affect the person in real life. October interrupts and decides that she's going to call it a night, but the others telling Miller that he can join them next session. In the office building, the boss walks outside to the hallway, but then he hears his door creak open from behind. Suspicious, he jumps into his room and finds nothing wrong. It's strange, and he's got no idea that a real-life demon is about to attack. He's about to head out again when he notices that the door he just locked has reopened, and Miller goes to check it out, hearing something rumble. Looking under his table, he realizes his controller is vibrating and takes it to turn the device off, but suddenly the man is ambushed. That makes 4 victims down with 6 more to go. The next morning, Hutch arrives at work to find his coworker crying, and walks over to Miller's office to find a crime scene has been set up. The officers tell him to stay back, shocked that he's dead, and mentions that they were just speaking a few hours back. Detective Thibodeau questions him what contact he had with the man, and the gamer informs him that they were playing video games online the day before with 4 other friends. They ask for his address, and the detective gives him his contact card to call if anything comes up. Later, Phineas plays through the game and finds the boss's dead character laying on a table. He's been stabbed to death just like Miller was in real life. Hutch refuses to look, and the others criticize Phineas for being so insensitive, but the man doesn't care. He insists they head back into the game and asks them to leave if they don't want to join him. Shocked, Hutch heads out to get some air, and the girls comfort him. October seizes the opportunity to ask more about Abigail, but as she lights up a cigarette, it triggers a traumatic memory from Hutch's childhood. That's when Swing comments that Miller dying in the game and getting stabbed to death in real life is far too coincidental to be an accident. He tries to understand the situation, but Hutch sure mentions that both of his friends had played Still Alive and then died in real life. It's a terrifying situation, and there's a chance that Phineas is going to be the next victim. Okay, 2 gruesome murders have been carried out, and the only thing in common between these cases is that Hutch here knew both of the victims, and that each of the players were playing video games before they died. It makes absolutely no sense that the police aren't connecting the dots here, and if I were them, I would investigate the only 2 things that are linking these very similar crimes together. The first thing the police should investigate is Hutch, but he would immediately be released because he has an alibi. Not only did Hutch have someone with him the night of his boss's murder, but he had 4 people with him that are willing to back him up, including Abigail, who barely knows him. After ruling Hutch out, that would leave the video game as the only link between the murders, and even if the police don't want to believe that something supernatural is happening here, it's possible that a serial killer created the game to find and kill their next victims. This would make the game extremely significant to their investigations, and if it were me, I would have to get it back from Hutch and his friends. If I were working for the police, I would take this video game to a tech service to see where and how it was developed. Some CD-ROMs and discs have timestamps on them to help link it back to a general area of where it was created. This could lead us right to the game developers or even the place that the woman in the video game lives. Now, if I were Hutch, I would be freaking the out right now and buying all of the roses within driving distance of me. The good thing about this situation is that the gamers haven't actually died in the game itself, and they have some time to try to find a solution. The gamers still refuse to break the game, so I would look for other ways to override the game's programming. Video games are developed using code, and that code is protected and encrypted, but a good hacker would be able to break into it. I would take the video game to a hacker to see if there's anything in it to explain how exactly it's working. By doing this, a hacker may also be able to rewrite the code to change the game and our fates. I would have the hacker give us unlimited lives, so even if we die, we'll come back in reality and live again despite how many times the murderer comes and gets us. The hacker might even be able to delete the murderous woman from the game altogether, or reveal where weapons are that we can use to kill her. The gamers need to buy themselves more time to figure out how to kill the murderous woman in reality, and by changing the coding of the game, it will help save them from dying in real life in the meantime. Running as fast as they can, the group head down the street to find Phineas slumped over in his chair. It looks like they were too late, but then he sits up. The man was just pulling a prank, and Hutch tries to explain his theory about the video games somehow killing people. But Phineas tells him it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense, and the guy shows them an item he found in the game. He flipped this mirror over so that its back can work as a reflective surface, but won't break like the other items they found. That's when he gets up and consoles Hutch, apologizing for his losses and telling him to take it easy. Later, weird events begin happening to each member of the group as they see terrifying visions and have near-death experiences that could be a sign that their time is running out. Terrified, Sweek begins to research perceptive reality, while Hutch here heads to his office that night and looks over the police reports of his dead friends. He reads that the victim had a broken neck and goes through the photos of his murdered friend, but as the man looks through Miller's file, he discovers the guy was stabbed with 14-inch adjoint twin blades. He finishes up for the night, now realizing that a deadly killer is already on his tail. The next morning, Hutch reunites with the group and notices that Phineas is missing. Not wanting to waste time, he tells the others about the information he found and how the victims involved in the murders died in real life, mentioning that one of the roommates, Sarah, was drained of blood. He connects the murders, realizing that every single death reflected what happened to the victims in the game. The goth girl agrees with him, revealing that Stay Alive was based on the real-life Elizabeth Bathory, who committed such terrible crimes that the townsfolk walled her up in her tower. But there was a catch. The woman had claimed she would one day come back, and the goth suggests she's using the video game to get revenge. Meanwhile, Phineas here is driving on the road and notices that he's headed into an eerie-looking forest. Suddenly, he spots the ghostly figure and swerves on the side of the road. He calls up the others, telling them that his car's broken down and he needs to be picked up. They promise to come find him, but then the man asks Swink about the perceptive reality theory. It's clear he's terrified, and his friends insist that he's safe because he didn't die in the game. But that was his biggest mistake. The man starts to hear a horse carriage approaching and sees there's no one coming on either side of the road. Elizabeth Bathory is coming, even though in the game she only appears at night. It's clear she's breaking her own rules, but before he can do anything, he's trampled over and killed. That makes 5 victims down, with 5 more to go. Okay, the gamers have finally come around to the idea that they're being picked off one by one in reality once they're killed in the game. The malevolent spirit of Elizabeth Bathory is linked to the game and has come back to wreak havoc and bloodshed on all who cross her. To make matters worse, it looks like even when the players haven't died in the game, the murderer has the ability to turn the game back on and kill them regardless of if they're playing. If it were me, I would learn everything about Elizabeth Bathory and the world of the game to find her and kill her. Elizabeth Bathory, also known as the Blood Countess, was actually a real person. She was born in 1560 and died in 1614. She was a serial killer and noblewoman who was known for killing hundreds of girls during the time she was alive. 4 of her servants who were rumored to have helped her were put on trial and convicted, while Elizabeth was put under house arrest and eventually confined to her castle where she died. All of this sounds like the right woman that's hunting the gamers, but the main problem is that Elizabeth Bathory lived in the Kingdom of Hungary, now Slovakia, and never lived in the United States, let alone Louisiana where the players are. However, since this is a game, this is probably an adaptation of her life, and we can use other clues to help find where she is. The important thing to note about Elizabeth is that although her crimes were real, she was rumored to be a vampire, and her life is said to be an inspiration for many vampire stories. If it were me, I would prepare to hunt Elizabeth like a vampire. Common ways to kill a vampire are putting a stake through their heart, decapitating them, and exposure to sunlight. This Elizabeth doesn't seem to have a problem killing during the daytime, so I would purchase stakes and knives to stab her in the heart and destroy her head. To find her, I would look at the world of the game and see what other clues I can find. Elizabeth's home is referred to as the Garouge Plantation, and since they're in Louisiana, where there are actually plantations, it's likely they'll be able to find her there. I would search for this plantation and its history on the internet and see if I can get any photos and blueprints of the inside of the house to make it easier to navigate. Although vampires are warded off by garlic, we already know that in this game, roses are useful to get rid of Elizabeth, so I would equip myself with several dozen. Vampires don't have reflections, and in Elizabeth's game, her reflection breaks mirrors, but she is repelled by reflective surfaces. Before entering the Garouge Plantation, I would use this information and make a suit of armor out of reflective metal to repel her spirit until I'm able to find her body and destroy it once and for all. This will be tricky to do while Elizabeth tries to kill us, so I would have one of the other players play the game to distract her from my whereabouts as the rest of us prepare ourselves to face off with her. The others arrive later to find his dead body laid out on the ground. Another one of their group is dead, and it's in the exact same way as the game. Hutch explains his theory to the detective, showing every piece of evidence to him, but the detective manages to connect every single incident to Hutch himself, suspecting the man of being complicit with the murders. He gets taken away for a private talk, while the detective's partner takes Swink's laptop and begins playing. The detective tells Hutch the next time he's seen at a crime scene, he'll be taken away for further questioning. That's when the man notices the assistant and quickly stops him, insisting that no one should be playing the video game. Thibodeau here calms them down and tells Hutch he'll look into the crime scene, but walks away, not believing a single word of his theory. Later, the group fight amongst each other and lose any idea of what to do. October blames Hutch for introducing the game to them, saying that it was his fault her brother is dead. Hutch apologizes but admits that he had no idea what trouble this was going to cause. October decides they need to end this now and tells him to go check out Loomis's house for any clues. She wants to find whoever murdered her brother and make sure he pays. Meanwhile, the detective's assistant checks in at this video game store, asking for information on Stay Alive. The clerk tells him that he's never heard of it and comments that it could be an underground game. Frustrated, he walks out of the store and tells his partner that he found no information, but when he gets into his car, the man is murdered by the deadly ghost. That makes 6 victims down, with 4 more to go. Hutch and Abigail head to Loomis's house, and he remembers when he used to stay here as a child. Hutch recalls that his father became paranoid of his wife, thinking that she was sleeping around. Furious, he set their house on fire, and only Hutch made it out alive. He blames himself for not being able to save his mother, and has had a fear of fire ever since. They enter the house and walk around, finding this room full of blood. Going into Loomis's room, he opens up his friend's computer and finds a device that shows the address of the game company. Heading out, he calls up Swink to give him directions to the game company's address, and that's when October he reveals that she's been reading a book called the Malleus Daemonium, a handbook for witch hunters during the Inquisition. The book mentions that if they find Elizabeth Bathory, they need to put 3 nails through her heart, neck, and forehead. This will put her human spirit back into her body. She tells him that the most important part of the book mentions an undead undead soul is only cleansed by burning its blood. October mentions that it's similar to a seance, where a strong enough spirit can be brought back with the proper text. Suddenly, a news report on TV informs them that a detective's assistant was murdered at Clearwater Mall. That's when the police arrive at their house, and the survivors are forced to pack their things, sneaking out of the apartment before they're caught. Taking a look inside, the detective finds a printout about Elizabeth Bathory, and soon, she's going to finish off the others. Meanwhile, Hutch asks Abigail about the diary they found in-game, and suggests that it's the proper text the goth girl said they needed to exorcise Elizabeth. Going back to Loomis's house, they meet up with Swink and explain that they conjured up the evil spirit by reciting the words in the game's introduction. That's when they notice that the game is on, and watch as this player character who looks like October walks around. In real life, she hears the noise from this house under construction. Swink freaks out and confronts Hutch, thinking that they were fine if they just avoided playing the game. It's clear that the game can play itself, and it's going to brutally murder another member of their group. Walking inside the building, October finds this shackle on the ground and is suddenly surprised by a ghostly figure. She carefully checks around the house and grabs this hammer, preparing herself to strike back. Noticing a nail gun, she takes it and approaches the demon. She shoots at the woman, but it doesn't do anything to her, and realizes that she's just made a big mistake. October tries to run away, but a shackle catches on her ankle, and she's taken away. Hearing her scream, the group tries to break in as October here is dangling from the ceiling. She curses the ghost before she's slashed across the neck and fatally wounded. That makes 7 victims down, with 3 more to go. Okay, these gamers are completely wasting their time, not preparing themselves for what's to come. They may be good at killing undead spirits in video games, but they're totally lost when it comes to reality. They already know that Elizabeth Bathory is out to get them, and instead of confronting her directly, they waste their time going to Loomis's house to look for clues. Rather than search for mail or the origin of the game, they're immediately drawn back into the game on Loomis's computer, only to watch October head for a trap. This makes no sense at all either, because none of them want to keep playing it, and the house should also be an active crime scene. The police are out to get Hutch now that they believe he's behind all the killings, so he needs to get to the Garage plantation to end this video game and kill Elizabeth once and for all. Since the gamers have still not tried to break the disc, equip themselves with roses, or confront Elizabeth directly at the plantation, they also need to buy themselves more time and get the police off their backs. Although it sounds dangerous to do this, the gamers could get other expert level gamers to get involved. These players are hardcore gamers, which means that they probably know other gamers from all over the world that will be really good at helping them kill the undead woman and win back their lives. If they invited others to play in their game, this would make it even more difficult for Elizabeth to focus on one individual target to kill. There doesn't seem to be a limit to the number of players that can play at the same time, so if the game is flooded with gamers, then it will take her much longer to carve through them before she has to refocus her attention back on us. By that time, we would have the opportunity to clear Hutch's name and get to the Garage plantation to find Elizabeth's body and destroy it. Now, ethically, getting these people involved in the game is a hard pill to swallow. These gamers will be risking their lives by playing, but there are plenty of people who would jump at the opportunity willingly to see that they killed a real-life ghost by playing video games. If they go into the game knowing the risks associated, there are still plenty of people that would do it. The bragging rights with killing a ghost would make you a legend in the gaming community, and would also solve all of their problems. Once there are more people playing, the game will be flooded with players, making it less likely that each individual player will die, since Elizabeth will be so distracted. Hutch runs inside hoping to save her, but it's already too late. Driving away, he freaks out, realizing that they just lost another friend. That's when Abigail here reveals that her entire story is a lie. She's not who they think she is, and this van is her home. Changing subjects, she insists they need to end this death spree before everyone is killed. Hutch decides they need to find her body and where it is in the real world. Swink takes out his laptop and says they need to keep playing the game, using himself as a decoy in-game to be chased by Elizabeth's ghost. They arrive at the game company's building, and Swink stays behind to continue playing, while the others head inside. They comment that it's a strange place for a game development company to be based in, and enter the empty house. While her friend goes exploring, Abigail notices these dolls on the wall side, realizing that one of them is Elizabeth. Hutch here gets a call from Swink, who tells him that he needs to get to the back room of the house. He guides them while using the game as a map, directing him outside until he spots an iron gate. Entering the cemetery, he arrives at the location and recognizes it as Garage's plantation. Her body's up in the tower, and he needs to go through the terrifying plantation to end it. Meanwhile, Abigail investigates a secret room and discovers Elizabeth's diary, filled with entries listing all the girls she's killed, but suddenly Abigail is brutally attacked. Hutch hears her scream and runs around the house onto the staircase with a locked door. Finding this crowbar, he pries the door open and runs inside the house while Abigail screams in pain. In the game, Swink finds her being held down by ghosts and throws down roses, making them disappear. In the real world, Hutch arrives and makes sure that she's okay. Calling Swink, he thanks him for saving the girl's life, and the friend reminds them they need to exorcise Elizabeth Bathory using 3 nails as well as have a way to burn her blood. Swink adds that they should bring some roses when suddenly he notices his controller vibrating and the car door closes. It's locked him out, and he watches as his in-game character is about to be killed. Acting quickly, he reaches for the controller and manages to avoid a gruesome death, but it's clear he's going to be the next victim. Okay, Swink is the smartest person here. If only he had caught on sooner that the game world and the real world overlapped, they may have been able to save more of their friends. However, now that the gamers know that the Garage Plantation is in fact a real place, they can use this knowledge to finally end Elizabeth's reign of terror. October has tipped them off that Elizabeth needs to be burned in order to save themselves from the curse. So the gamers should take gasoline from Abigail's car and use it to douse Elizabeth's body in gasoline as soon as it's discovered. Then, they need to nail Elizabeth in the head and chest to force her spirit back into her body. To make this process go more quickly and efficiently, I would get a battery-operated nail gun before going in. At this point, the gamers are already at the house, so I would phone a friend to see if someone can bring one to me in time. The gamers live in the area, and there's nothing stopping them from calling a friend that isn't playing the game to come and help. While they're at it, they can bring roses too. Hutch and Abigail are also currently looking for Elizabeth's body, which they assume is up in a clock tower, so one of them will need to siphon gas out of Abigail's tank, while Swink plays the game to distract Elizabeth. Dividing and conquering is the best strategy here because Elizabeth can only be in so many places at once. Once the gamers have identified where Elizabeth is and have collected the gas, they should soak her body in it. This will make it easier to light her on fire as soon as her soul's back in her body. This is important because Elizabeth is still a threat to the gamers even after she has returned to her body, and dying after surviving her haunting would be a serious shame. Then I would use the nail gun on her body to return her soul to it and light her on fire with Hutch's lighter. This used to be Loomis's lighter, and it's just a little bit of poetic justice to have him take her down. Killing her as soon as possible is the safest way to survive, and preparing her for this moment is the best way to secure their victory. The only problem with this plan is that the gamers have to fight off Elizabeth at the same time. Swink is helping them remotely, but they are putting their lives at risk by going further and further into the Garage Plantation, which is why it is so important that they also have roses on hand. Breaking into the van, Swink plays the game, but realizes that he's about to be killed by the ghost and runs as far away as possible as he's chased by this deadly carriage. He falls into a bed of roses, and this seals his fate. The others reach the van and see that his character has died. Now, only 2 members of the group remain, and the deadly video game is about to kill them all. With time running out, they quickly gather some roses and the 3 nails needed to exorcise the ghost. That's when they hear the carriage coming their way and run into the tower. Abigail enters first, but Hutch locks the door on her, using himself as a decoy and quickly taking out this rose to make the carriage disappear. He walks inside the tower and decides to take a lead, heading deeper underground. Hutch drops a rose onto the tomb floor, and they continue walking through, nearly being attacked by this ghostly figure before Abigail scares it off with the rose. That's when they realize that more of them are coming, and the survivors run as fast as they can, dropping another rose down before entering the strange room. It's the entrance to the tower, and Hutch comments that there should be a second door before heading towards the staircase, when suddenly the door locks behind him. Abigail insists that he finish off the job and demands that he destroy this cursed game. Terrified, Hutch gives her a rose and reassures the girl that she'll be safe. With no other choice, he heads upstairs and walks over to this bed, opening up the curtain to reveal Elizabeth's body. Hutch starts to perform the ritual, but the ghost finds Abigail and chains her feet, leaving her hanging from the ceiling. A blade is put close to her neck, but that's when Hutch pierces the ghost with a nail, and the ghostly figure disappears. It seems to have worked, and Hutch starts to pack up his things, when suddenly he looks back to see Elizabeth standing up. Looking towards his reflective laptop, he remembers that the woman broke all the mirrors in her mansion to avoid looking at her own face, and gets a clever idea. He shows her the laptop, and the demonic woman lets out a horrifying scream, distracting her for long enough that he can grab his lighter. The man quickly sets the room on fire and tries to escape, but the door is locked. He's going to burn to death, and there's nothing he can do to break out. Suddenly, Swink and Abigail open the door, insisting that he get out now while the place burns down. The group walks out of the plantation happy that they'll no longer be haunted, but they have no idea that Stay Alive has just been released into stores, and now everyone is going to brutally die.
But what do you think? How would you beat Stay Alive? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How To Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
If you and your friend's weekend reunion turned out to be a trap for a madman's insane death game, what would you do? This cabin in the woods is hiding a dark secret, and before the end of the night, they'll all be forced to play for their lives. I'm here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the revenge death game in The Blackening. These unsuspecting friends are about to have a horrifying experience. Late one night at some isolated cabin, this girl Morgan is setting the place up for a weekend getaway with her friends, who should be arriving first thing in the morning, when she notices a door across the room slowly creak open on its own. The woman peeks out into the darkness, but refuses to get any closer, shouting at whoever it is to come out. Suddenly, someone grabs her by the shoulder, but it turns out to be just her boyfriend Sean. Morgan follows him upstairs so that he can show her something weird that he found, the two having no idea that someone is watching them through the window. Upstairs, they come to a small green door with a sign that reads Game Room. Sean says that he remembers leaving it open, which makes Morgan immediately want to turn around, but he insists that there's nothing to worry about and pushes his way inside. The room is filled with games, but there's one on the center table that quickly grabs their attention, called The Blackening. It's blatantly messed up, but Morgan here says that she's curious what the rules are. That's when the piece at the center starts talking, telling them to pick a card. The woman picks the first one and reads it out loud, asking them to name one black character from a horror movie who survived until the end before their timer runs out, adding that if they get it wrong, they die. Sean quickly answers with Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps from Scream 2, but Morgan tells him that he's wrong. Getting nervous, they empty the game pieces out onto the board, noticing that one of them looks identical to the earrings that Morgan always wears. Just then, the timer runs out, and the voice from the board says that they didn't answer correctly. Suddenly, all the lights in the room go out, and the door slams shut, leaving them in total darkness. The two manage to find each other, only to realize that they can hear someone else breathing heavily in the room. Morgan turns on the light from her phone, and as soon as her back is turned, Sean gets shot through the neck with an arrow. Quickly bleeding to death, he tells Morgan to get out of there, but she crashes into a man wearing a strange black mask, and he throws her to the ground, grabbing her by the leg and dragging her into the shadows. Okay, it looks like this psycho wasn't playing around after all. There's no way that they could have known that they were walking into a death game, but still, getting killed in the warm-up round? That's just embarrassing. Hey Morgan and Sean, you up. Your first mistake was showing up to this creepy-ass cabin the night before all of your friends. Sure, I get that you were probably looking to get the place decorated and have some private quality time before the rest of the gang arrived, but that also means you'll be the first ones to get killed if you find yourself in the middle of some kind of deranged death game. Which, sure enough, is exactly what ended up happening. And it's not like you can say that there weren't plenty of warning signs. Let's start back down here on the first floor, where Morgan here noticed the door to the basement swung open by itself. Hey Morgan, I'm not sure if you know this, but heavy wooden doors don't usually do that on their own. Upstairs, we have the opposite problem, with Sean saying that he remembers leaving the door to the game room open. Morgan here was right to want to turn and run away, when you're alone in a rental house miles away from civilization. Call me paranoid, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. This brings us to the board game, which, besides being horribly offensive, was giving off some pretty bad vibes right from the start. On the cover, there's an old house in the middle of the woods, kind of like the one that you're in right now. And then on the board, we've got a knife, a well, a bow and arrow, a bear trap, and the words, "You survive." Now, each of these items is already a horror cliche on their own, but add them all together and you probably should have been able to figure out for yourself that this game was going to have some deadly consequences. Here's a question for you, Sean. After deciding to play, despite all of the red flags, and reading that if you got the wrong answer, you die, what the hell were you thinking just confidently blurting out the first answer that came to mind? As your girlfriend here correctly pointed out, the two characters that you named died in the first scene of that movie. Did you just think that you could get out of a death game by just making things up as you went along? That was the warm-up question, man. Do better. So now the door slammed shut and the lights went out. This is what you might call not ideal. Think about it this way. If you can't see, then the killer can't see. That is, unless he's got some night vision goggles like Buffalo Bill. Sean, you only got shot here after Morgan gave away your position with the phone light. And as for you, Morgan, although you put up a pretty good fight, you made a critical mistake by continuing to push the attack against an obviously stronger opponent, when the smartest thing to do would have been to dodge back and try to maneuver around him. Instead of panicking and immediately pulling out your phone, what you both needed to do here was stay low and quiet, use sound and touch to avoid danger while you wait for your eyes to adjust to the darkness, and take advantage of the element of surprise to ambush the guy and pummel him into submission before he started picking you off one by one. When you ignore all the warning signs and wind up being victims before the real death game has even started, Morgan and Sean, you f***ed up. The next morning, these three friends, Dwayne, Lisa, and Allison, are driving through the countryside on their way to the cabin, excited to get everyone back together for some partying and good times. Meanwhile, this girl, Shanika, stops at a gas station for some snacks and a bottle of wine. Looking back at the counter, she notices the cashier watching her from the end of the aisle and backs up right into this nerdy guy, Clifton. He explains that he was on his way to the reunion too until his car broke down, so Shanika says that she'll give him a ride. When they finally arrive at the cabin, they notice their friend King being questioned by a park ranger. The man accuses him of trespassing until Lisa pulls out the guest list and shows them that they rented the place for the weekend. The group walks inside just as a mysterious figure slips out of sight, and Allison goes to drop off her bags while the others look around the house. Upstairs, a noise draws her attention to the green door, but when she goes to check it out, she finds out that it's locked and isn't able to get inside. King here starts mixing up a drink in the kitchen, pouring in an insane amount of sugar, and calling it his special Kool-Aid. Taking the concoction outside, he leaves Lisa in the room by herself, and as soon as he's gone, she hears something on the other side of this door that leads down to the basement, but decides not to investigate. Later on that night, Dwayne here notices one of Morgan's earrings laying on the floor. Just then, the back door of the house slowly opens on its own, but he closes it and locks it without stepping outside. As he's peering through the window to get a better look at what's out there, Shanika jumps out from the darkness, scaring him half to death. The woman bursts into the party, followed by the nerdy guy Clifton, but no one there seems to remember where they know him from. She asks the others where Morgan and Sean are, but Allison says that they texted her earlier that day and said they'd be back this evening. Suddenly, all the lights in the house go out, and when King stands up to check out the fuse box, Lisa notices someone passing by the window outside. Starting to get worried, everyone decides to stick together as they go see what happened. Upstairs, they find that every room has been locked, and someone put the game room sign back up on the green door. Thinking that it must be a prank from their missing friends, King here tries the handle, and this time, the door swings open. Okay, anyone who can't tell that this is a trap must not be watching enough How to Beat videos. Something tells me that they're not going to like what they discover on the other side of that door, but I guess there's only one way to find out. Imagine this, you and your friends rent a house out in the middle of nowhere, when suddenly all of the lights shut off, and it looks like someone's watching you from outside. Is it safe to stick around, or time to go into survival mode? The good news is that there's safety in numbers, and that's why it's important that everyone sticks together. First stop, the kitchen or garage, so everyone can grab something like a frying pan, bat, or paddle to defend themselves. Then it's time to head for the fuse box, which should be somewhere like the garage, laundry room, or if you're extremely unlucky, the basement. Remember, this would be the perfect spot for an ambush, so you need to be very aware of your surroundings. And maybe let someone else be the one who goes first. If you can get the power on without running into trouble, then congratulations, you survived the night. But when it comes to this group of friends, they're about to walk right into a trap that's straight out of their worst nightmares. After getting everyone armed up and doing what they can to restore the power, the next step would be to deal with whoever it was they noticed watching them through the living room window. Sticking together, they should make their way to every entrance in the house, locking the doors to make sure that no one can get in, and also giving themselves a chance to get familiar with any escape routes if things start to go all Friday the 13th. Then it's time to gather in a defensible location and call for help if they have cell service. Or wait until morning when they'll have better odds of finding their way back to safety. They'll want to choose an area of the house that doesn't limit their potential escape routes and has plenty of furniture to use as makeshift barricades. Right now, they might think that it's all just a prank from two of their missing friends, but the truth is that something more dangerous could be going on. For example, Shanika here noticed that the creepy guy from the gas station watching her every move, so it's entirely possible that he stealthily followed her and Clifton back to the house and waited until nightfall to start his attack. A smart move would be to activate all of their car alarms using their key remotes, which should cause enough of a commotion to hopefully scare him off, or even get the attention of anyone in the area who might be able to help. Also, when it comes to finding the missing couple, it's not unusual for close friends to share their locations on their iPhones, or even through Snap Maps. So if they can get cell service or connect to Wi-Fi, a quick check of these apps might reveal if they're somewhere in the house. If that doesn't work, then they can always try just calling them. If both of their phones are turned off and go straight to voicemail, then that's immediately suspicious. And if they hear one of the phones start ringing from somewhere like the basement, then they'll know that it's too late for their friends, and time for them to get ready to fight for their lives. One of them should peek into the room and have a look around to see if it's even worth their time. After a quick glance, they'd see that there's only one way out, and a suspiciously placed board game just sitting there on the center table. It should be pretty obvious that you do not want to go in there, but unfortunately, these friends here still think that it's all a joke, and they're about to walk straight into a trap. Stepping inside, they notice the blackening game there on the table, pointing out that their friend would never plan something like this. Allison realizes that each piece represents an aspect of one of their personalities, handing the figures to their matching friends. Still convinced that it's a prank, they all agree to play the game, but that was their biggest mistake. Just then, the creepy voice starts to speak, telling them to pick a card and save Morgan. Suddenly, the door slams shut, and the TV turns on by itself, showing camera footage of their friend tied up in a chair, while the creepy voice starts to explain the rules. They need to answer the question correctly before the timer runs out, and if they manage to get 10 questions right, everyone will be free to go. However, if they get one question wrong, then their friend will be killed, and if they refuse to play at all, everyone dies. To prove that it means business, the voice shows a man standing behind Morgan on the TV, before cutting to an image of their friend Sean's lifeless body. Everyone starts freaking out, but Clifton here says that they need to play to save their friend, and they all reluctantly agree. Okay, this is bad. They're all officially trapped in this psycho's death game, and they're going to have to think quickly if they want to survive. Before the game even started, they noticed that each character piece matched with a major trait of their personalities, like a purse for Lisa and her materialistic lifestyle, and a crown for King because, well, that's his name. The one that sticks out the most, to me though, is the dice for Clifton, which should mean that he loves playing games. Now, call me quick to jump to conclusions, but I'm already getting suspicious of this guy. Let's not forget that he was the only person that nobody else could remember, and he also seemed the most eager to get the game started when they opened it up. In a lot of death games, the killer will plant themselves in with the victims. That way they can subtly influence their decisions and watch as they all turn on each other. Although there isn't any definitive proof yet, I'd be keeping a very close eye on Clifton here, since he's clearly the top suspect. Whoever designed the game knows a lot about each of them personally, meaning the killer must be someone who they're all close to. With this in mind, the group should start thinking about anyone who they know who could have some reason to seek revenge, and try their best to figure out why they're all here, since this could help them come up with a strategy to survive. But for now, it looks like their only choice is to play the game and see what happens. Gathering around the table, they begin drawing cards and answering questions about Black history, using their collective knowledge to make it through the first few rounds, until they're challenged to name 5 Black actors who've been on the TV show Friends. One by one, they start naming the characters that they can remember, but this time, the game says it was a trick question, and none of them were supposed to know. On the TV, they watch as the man attaches a device to their friend's hair, trying to scalp her, but only rips her wig off instead. In a burst of strength, Morgan manages to break free, kicking her attacker between the legs and running for her life. Realizing that they need to get out of there, King goes back and tries the game room door. Luckily this time it's open, and they all rush back to the main part of the house. The group immediately starts trying to get outside, only to realize that the killer has locked them in. Grabbing a stone decoration, Shanika pelts it at the window as hard as she can, but the glass turns out to be reinforced. Even if they could somehow break through, Lisa notices that there are bars on the other side, and the kidnapper flattened their car tires by shooting them with arrows. While they're all figuring out what to do, the TV turns on and shows Morgan running up the basement stairs, and the boys start trying to set her free. Dwayne notices the killer closing in, so King here runs to his bag and grabs a small handgun, shouting for Morgan to stand back while he shoots the lock. After a few shots, the door slowly cracks open, but nobody steps out, and the darkness makes it impossible to see anything inside. Suddenly, an arrow flies out of the darkness, hitting King in the shoulder. Another shot nearly misses Lisa's head, and they all run for their lives as the killer steps towards them out of the basement, except for Shanika, who bravely charges at the man and traps him in the doorway instead. Dwayne rushes in to back her up, and while she's holding the door shut, the woman shouts at Lisa to go and get them a knife, jamming it straight into his foot and slamming the door as he retreats from the injury. Everyone gathers back in the living room, but just then, another killer appears from behind and fires at them with his crossbow. They all manage to dive out of the way, except for the unlucky King here, who takes another shot right in the same spot. Nnamdi lunges for the pistol and misses every shot, but it's enough to scare the attacker off for now. Grabbing King, but dropping the gun, they all follow Clifton, who leads them back to the game room, letting the door close and saying that they're locked inside once again. Okay, I know that they're under a lot of stress here, but why the hell would they ever go back to the game room? Of all the places that they could have gone, the room with no useful weapons or escape routes is absolutely the last place that I would have picked. The group missed their best chance at turning the tables back downstairs when the killer finally revealed himself. Stabbing him in the foot was a sweet move, but what they really should have done here was have someone take King's pistol and shout for Shanika and Dwayne to let him open the door, and then blast the guy as soon as he tried to step through. All of the doors may be locked, but the killer still managed to get inside. Either he has the keys, or there's another way out somewhere down in the basement. Whatever the case, taking him out right then would have been their best bet. There must be 2 or more killers working together, since there's no way that the guy could have made it to the other side of the house so quickly. Knowing this, killing one of the attackers won't be enough to stop them, because the other ones will just keep coming after you. But if you could somehow manage to take one of them alive, then you might be able to use them as a human shield or a bargaining chip, and possibly interrogate them for any helpful information that you could use to your advantage. So if you can, it might be smart to aim for the leg. Right now, it looks like they outnumber the killers 3-1. Instead of panicking and running back to the game room, I would have gathered everyone together, taken King's pistol and any other weapons that we could find, and stormed the basement to either take out the wounded attacker or to see if there was another way to escape. The worst thing to do is to give them more opportunities to start picking you off one at a time, so it's much smarter to go in for the kill now while they're on the retreat, then run right back into their trap. But it looks like these friends are about to be stuck in round 2. The voice tells them to pick another card, and Lisa pulls one from the deck. Reading it out loud, she says that the killer will spare their lives only if they choose one person from the group as a sacrifice. They have 2 minutes to decide which one of them will be killed, otherwise they're all going to die. Each of them argues their case, ruling them out one by one until they eventually land on Clifton, saying that he wasn't even invited to the reunion in the first place. With time running out, each of them votes for Clifton, locking him in as the sacrifice. Angry and humiliated, he scolds them for turning on each other and giving the game exactly what it wanted, before grabbing a poker from the fireplace and walking outside to meet his fate. The rest of the group immediately starts to feel bad for what they've just done, but when they try to go get him, the door to the room is locked tight. Just then, the TV turns back on, and they watch as the killer shoots Clifton in the chest with an arrow, looking up at the camera and dragging him out of sight. To make matters worse, the voice chimes in that they broke the rules since Clifton didn't vote, so that turn doesn't even count towards their score. Furious, Nnamdi slams the board to the ground, breaking the speaker. In response to this outburst, the killer appears on TV staring straight into the camera, and says that since they refuse to keep playing, they'll be going straight into the sudden death round. The only rule is to survive. And after 3 minutes, he'll unlock every door in the house, leaving them to choose whether they're better off running out into the woods or trying to stand their ground somewhere inside. Everyone starts to argue about what they think they should do, quickly realizing that they're split on which strategy to go with. Shanika here proves that she's the smartest once again by pointing out that either way, they all need to grab some weapons. So the group decides to make their way over to the kitchen and arm up. Now that they've all got a weapon, the conversation turns back to whether they should run for their lives or bunker down. Realizing that they're all not going to agree, Allison chimes in that they need to split up. And after saying their goodbyes, Allison, Shanika, and King head out through the back door, leaving Dwayne, Lisa, and Namdi behind to fend for themselves. Okay, if we're listening to the killer, then we're left with two options here. Either taking our chances out in the woods, or staying in the house and trying to hold them off. But if we use 100% of our brain, there's actually a third strategy that we could go with. There's a good chance that the killer is going to instantly take out anyone who's brave enough to go outside. So at first, I'd put myself on the team that planned to stay in the house and use the runners as meat shields to see what ended up happening to them. If they made it to the tree line without being attacked, then I'd grab a weapon and start to follow their path for a short distance before quietly slipping off of the trail and doubling back to the house, and then following the path again. This way, if the killer didn't immediately go after the first group and waited to follow me instead, I'd now be behind them and have the element of surprise on my side. Now, you definitely don't want to end up getting lost, so if we're going to run for it, it's important to have a plan for where we're going. The best strategy would be to sneak up the driveway and back to the road, and stay out of sight while following it back to any sort of civilization, like a neighbor's house or a gas station where you could contact some help. It's not going to be easy, but I'd much rather take my chances out in the woods where I could get creative with my strategy than back in the house where the killer controls the environment. After making sure that the coast is clear, Allison's group starts to run down the trail, having no idea that the killer is watching them from the shadows. Eventually, they make it to a river and realize they went the wrong way, somehow losing Allison in the process. Shanika here notices that she can see houses in the distance, telling her friend that she's going to swim across and get help. Since he can't swim, King decides to hang back and keep a lookout from up in the tree. Just as she's about to make it across, the killer comes out of hiding and starts shooting at her with his crossbow. Luckily, he's not a very good shot, and Shanika manages to dodge his arrows, turning around and swimming back to the shore. Okay, what the hell was Shanika thinking here? She was so close to making it across, but for some reason, she decided to swim back towards the man with the crossbow. Not exactly the smartest move. Instead of turning around, what she should have done was kept pushing across the river and then ran like hell for one of those houses that she could see in the distance. Since they're out in the countryside, there's a good chance that the homeowners have a gun. So as long as she was careful enough with her approach to avoid scaring them and getting shot herself, she should be home free and able to contact the police to go out there and save the rest of her friends. Going back towards the danger when she was almost at the finish line was a horrible decision, and hopefully she doesn't end up paying the price.
Coming soon to a theater near you, How to Beat's official Patreon. All the guts, all the blood, all the screams, plus nasty extras. How to Beat's Patreon. 2 times the shock, 2 times the terror, 2 times the subscription levels. Have a damn good day, and it only gets better. Both levels bid you welcome to pre-sales for ghoulish official How to Beat merchandise, and support the evil scientists behind the How to Beat videos. It only gets better. Subscribers are invited to the X-rated party. Ad-free and uncensored videos too repulsive for all audiences are available on demand. How to Beat's Patreon. In space, no one can hear you scream, but on Patreon, everyone can see you bleed. How to Beat's Patreon. Join us if you dare.
Realizing that he needs to take action, King reaches for his knife but drops it right at the killer's feet, leaving him with no choice except to dive out of the tree and tackle him to the ground. Getting to their feet, the two of them start to brawl, with King easily overpowering the guy now that he's unarmed. But just when he has him on the ropes, he cramps up from drinking too much Kool-Aid, and the killer quickly grabs an arrow, stabbing him through the back of the leg. The man stands over him, striking him hard across the face, and that's when Allison appears out of the forest, holding 3 tree arrows in her hand like Wolverine and jumping towards him with a nasty spin move. Knocking the knife out of his hand, she stuns the guy with a palm strike to the throat before using her arrow hand to punch him several times in the legs and chest. And he collapses to the ground, finally dead. Taking off his mask, Shanika realizes that it's the same one-eyed man that she saw back at the gas station. Allison here decides to search his pockets, finding an asthma inhaler that shows his name, Camden Connor, and lists his address as the cabin where they're staying. When Shanika looks at his boots, she points out that it can't be the same man who ambushed them from the basement, because this guy's clearly lacking a stab wound to the foot, meaning there must be more than one killer on the loose. Okay, now that they know that there are two killers involved, this opens up an opportunity for them to settle the score. If this guy came after them, then that must mean that his accomplice is most likely occupied with trying to kill the friends who stayed back at the house. Knowing this, what they need to do here is grab this guy's weapon, double back to the cabin, and get the jump on the other freak while he's distracted. After that, they'd be able to catch their breath and figure out a way to get help, knowing for sure that the danger was taken care of. Of course, there's always the option to cut and run right now while they still have the chance to get away, leaving the rest of the group to fend for themselves, which would probably be the safer bet. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lisa here sees that the basement door is open and decides to go rescue Morgan, with the other two hesitantly following her down the stairs. After passing by a massive stone wall, they come to the room where their friend was being held hostage, but there's no sign of her anywhere except for bloodstains on the floor. Looking around the workshop, Dwayne notices a desk full of monitors that show security camera footage from every room in the house, realizing that the killers have been secretly watching them the whole time. Just then, they hear a noise from somewhere above them, and Nnamdi grabs a shield before going back upstairs. The group rushes through the back door and nearly crashes right into a shocked Ranger White. They immediately drop their weapons to the floor, but Lisa still questions if they can even trust him. The Ranger reassures them that he's just there to help, and tries to radio for backup after they explain what's been going on, but isn't able to get through since the killers are blocking any signals. The friends follow Ranger White down to his car and jump inside, but just when he's about to get in, he notices something happening down the trail, telling the others to lock the doors and lay low while he goes to investigate and promising to be right back. While they're waiting for him to return, Lisa finds one of the killer's masks on the floor by her feet. Horrified, the three of them start trying to get out and run, but keep locking themselves in because they're all going for it at the same time. Just as they finally get the doors open, the killer fires 2 arrows into the side of the car and they quickly take cover back inside. That's when Ranger White jumps up in the window, begging them to unlock the door and let them in, but Lisa responds by simply holding up the mask. He promises them that he found it out in the woods, but it's already too late. And suddenly an arrow pierces right through his neck, killing him and shattering the driver's side window. Deciding to run for their lives, while he stops to reload, Lisa and Nnamdi make it to safety, but Dwayne ends up pinned on the side of the truck. He tells them to save themselves, never believing that they'll actually do it, but the two of them flee the scene with almost no hesitation, leaving Dwayne behind to survive on his own. Okay, while everyone was busy panicking, they missed a chance to arm themselves with a very powerful weapon. Ranger White here was carrying a pistol, and since we didn't hear any gunshots, it's safe to say that the thing was still fully loaded. In between crossbow shots, Dwayne could have easily slipped around to the other side of the truck, or picked up a long stick to reach underneath and pull the weapon towards him, and then used it to provide covering fire while someone grabbed the Ranger's keys, started up the truck, and got them the hell out of there. Instead, he hesitated and gave his friends a chance to leave him for dead, just so that they could run right back to where all of this chaos started in the first place. Lisa and Nnamdi managed to make it back to the house, hiding out in an air vent above the staircase while they try to figure out what to do next. Following their tracks, the killer comes in and starts searching around, but when he looks up at the vent, they quickly hide out of sight. Just as he's about to look closer, someone turns on the record player, drawing his attention away, and as soon as he's gone, Dwayne jumps up and climbs into the vent to hide with them. Getting annoyed, the killer turns off the signal blocker, and their phones instantly start going off. Their hiding spot still hasn't been discovered, but Dwayne here can't keep himself quiet, and suddenly, arrows start flying up through the vent right in front of them. After hearing them scream, the killer climbs up and sees them inside, which is when Dwayne gets so nervous that he pukes all over the man's face, sending him tumbling over the railing and down the flight of stairs. Dwayne nervously runs down the stairs and grabs the crossbow, with Lisa following close behind. She raises her candlestick and swings it at the killer, but accidentally catches it on a wooden support beam, giving the man an open shot to kick her straight in the chest. Nnamdi hits him with a 4-piece combo, only to slip and fall to the ground as the killer stands over him. Dwayne aims the crossbow and fires a shot directly at his head, the man blocking it with his hand at the last second, but toppling over and crashing to the floor, seemingly dead. The group wastes no time getting back to arguing about personal drama, and while they're distracted, the psycho pulls the arrow out of his hand and stands up to finish the job. Suddenly, another arrow pierces him from behind, this time fired by Shanika and her squad. He slowly turns to confront them, but that's when Lisa here takes her candlestick and bashes him across the side of the head, standing over him and pulverizing his face for way longer than was arguably necessary. Nnamdi checks the man's pockets, finding a wallet that reveals his name was Clive Connor, the twin brother of the man who attacked them out in the woods. They also discover a receipt with each of their initials listed, proving that someone paid the men a measly $100 per person to kill them all off. Okay, both of the attackers are finally dead, but that doesn't mean that they're safe yet. According to that receipt that they found, someone staged this whole thing and paid the rednecks to take them out. And if they're paying close enough attention, they should notice something interesting about that list. There's only one person whose initials weren't written down: Clifton. And although they think that they saw him die, there's also a good chance that he faked his death to clear himself of any suspicion. Based on this, I wouldn't be getting too comfortable until I also found his body and confirmed the kill. The group starts discussing what to do next, with everyone deciding to head back down into the workshop to search for any signs of their missing friends, and hopefully use the computers to somehow signal for help, while Allison and King stay upstairs to keep watch. Making their way into the basement, they turn on the lights and find that the Ranger and Clifton's bodies are propped up at a table with the blackening game placed between them. Nnamdi pulls a note from Clifton's pocket which says that they're getting warmer, and contains a newspaper clipping of a fatal accident where Clifton was driving under the influence and killed a woman who was walking down the street. Just then, a TV in the corner of the room turns on, showing footage of the nerd throwing 2 bodies down into the basement well. As soon as they realize that it's him, Clifton stands up from his chair, revealing that he was behind the attacks all along, and he has the entire house rigged with explosives that he'll set off if they try to fight back or escape. Using some switches on his belt, he remotely locks the doors and traps them in the basement, ordering them to drop their weapons so that they can finish the game. Lisa here asks him why he's doing this, but that's actually the question that he wants them to answer. Putting the pieces together, they realize that it must have something to do with the accident from the newspaper. It turns out that on that same night 10 years ago, everyone here was at a Juneteenth party, and Clifton was just excited to be there. Although he was never a great dancer or social butterfly, one thing that he was always good at was games, and he hoped to use his talent to fit in. But the only game that they were interested in playing was spades, and he had no understanding of the rules since nobody plays it in Vermont, where he grew up. After making a rookie mistake, the rest of the group relentlessly made fun of him, making Clifton feel so embarrassed that he drank alcohol for the first time in his life and drove home to get away, which is when he fatally struck the woman and ended up serving 4 years in jail. Blaming the friends for the accident, he decided to hire the rednecks to take them all out, but now that they're dead, he's going to finish the job himself. Okay, now we for sure know who was really behind this madness. They're cornered with no way to escape, and Clifton says that he has the place rigged to blow, which leaves them with only one option: rush him now, while they have a numbers advantage before he has a chance to start picking people off, and hope that he's either bluffing about the explosives or that they can take him down before he pushes the button. If they could get the detonator away from him, then this little nerd shouldn't be much of a problem for 4 angry adults who are fighting for their lives. Time's running out, and they need to act now before Clifton goes through with any more of this evil scheme. giving them one last chance. He demands that Lisa choose one person from the group to serve as a sacrifice. Shanika here starts going off on Clifton, and while he's distracted, Dwayne gives Lisa a look, signaling to her that he wants her to play along with the game. Going along with the plan, Lisa chooses herself as a sacrifice, which causes Clifton to fly into a rage since that wasn't part of the rules. While he's talking, Dwayne wordlessly signals to Nnamdi that they're going to jump him, but when he looks back at Clifton, he realizes that the guy picked up on the whole plan. Raising his crossbow, he fires an arrow at Lisa, but Nnamdi jumps in front of it just in time. He's still alive, although badly injured, and that's when Allison finds another control panel on the dead man upstairs, shutting off all the lights and giving her friends a chance to find cover. Dwayne immediately rushes at Clifton and holding him still while Shanika fires an arrow into his shoulder. Putting out a jar of chili powder from his pocket, he throws the dust in Clifton's face before kicking him down the well. In the morning, they all sit in front of the cabin wondering what they should do next and laughing at the idea of calling the cops. Instead, they decide that it'd be safer to call the fire department, only for them all to get blasted with the hose as soon as they arrive.
But what would you do? If you and your friends were invited to a weekend extravagant getaway in a cabin in the woods somewhere, only to find out that you were being hunted by two evil rednecks, would you grab whatever weapons you could find and fight back, or would you find a closet to cower in until you all were picked off one by one? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this. Oh, and just as a reminder, we upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays now. I think I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah. Have a damn good day.
If the person who loved you the most was brutally taken out by an insane cult and their demonic minions, what would you do? This manipulative psycho thinks that he can take whatever he wants, but he's about to find out the hard way what happens when you mess with someone who has nothing left to lose. I'm gonna break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Children of the New Dawn and the Black Skull Bikers in Mandy. This happy couple is about to have the worst night of their lives. Finishing up his work far out in the mountains of Southern California, this logger Red makes his way back to his secluded home where his girlfriend Mandy is working on her art. After watching her draw for a while, the two of them head off to bed, talking about their days until they both fall asleep. The next morning, Mandy takes her things and walks down the path to her job at the local gas station, as a strange, red mist fills the air. On her way there, she unknowingly crosses paths with a van owned by a deranged cult called the Children of the New Dawn, and their leader stares her down as they drive past, quickly becoming obsessed with her. The cult decides to shack up at a motel where their leader, Jeremiah Sand, becomes bedridden with heartache over not having Mandy for himself. This old lady, Mother Marilyn, tries to see if she can make him feel better, but he rudely explains that the only thing he wants is for his followers to bring him the girl, throwing her out of the room and telling her to send in this creepy guy, Brother Swan. The man asks what he can do to help, and Sand replies that he wants him to go get Mandy by using a strange instrument called the Horn of Abraxas to summon some unknown force to take her, offering up a new member of the cult as sacrifice to seal the deal. Later that day, Mother Marilyn walks into the gas station where Mandy works and strikes up some awkward conversation, clearly making the girl feel uncomfortable. She asks her if she lives nearby, and Mandy hesitantly responds that they have a house down by the lake. But that was her biggest mistake. After ringing up her things, the woman says that she'll see her later and walks out of the store. Okay, these creeps are bad news. Mandy here might just be too caught up in her fantasy books and art projects to realize it, but she's just crossed paths with a group of whacked out warlocks with seriously evil intentions. And if she doesn't catch on soon, things could get dangerous fast. By now, you've definitely realized that the Children of the New Dawn aren't just your average troop of granola-munching hippies with a van and a taste for illegal substances. They're actually something much worse. A death cult, centered around worshipping their wannabe pop star of a leader, Jeremiah Sand. In the real world, the term cult is used to describe a group of people that can range in size from half a dozen to several million members, who have given up their individual lives to worship a manipulative leader with unusual and sometimes dangerous religious beliefs. Think of them like K-pop stans, except instead of selling you concert tickets and tour merch, they're just trying to get you to drink the Kool-Aid. Cults are almost always built on totalitarian power structure, meaning that they only have one leader. And when it comes to decision making, it's their way or the highway. No one group has the power to question their authority because this person is looked at as their only hope for salvation, and without them, their entire belief system would quickly fall apart. In order to achieve this power and build their following, cult leaders and their established members seek out emotionally vulnerable people and offer them promises of acceptance and community before methodically isolating them from any outside influences and manipulating every aspect of their lives until all of their personal barriers are broken down and they become completely devoted. Once they're fully under the spell, recruits will happily do anything that the leader requests, often at the cost of their own well-being. This particular group here has their sights set on Mandy, so if she doesn't want to end up as their next victim, she should use this knowledge to look out for warning signs and come up with a plan to fight back if things start to get dangerous. Since most cults, including this one, are nothing without their leader, this means that their source of strength also happens to be their biggest weakness. By going after Sand either physically or psychologically, you could turn the tables and collapse the whole organization from the inside. Sand here is clearly delusional and very abusive toward his followers. He rips into Mother Marlene for just trying to help, and even decides to offer up their newest recruit as a sacrifice to get what he wants. Knowing this, there's a chance that it could be possible to turn his followers against him under the right conditions. For example, Marlene seems to be jealous of his newfound obsession with Mandy, probably noticing his attention and love towards her fading away in her old age, since she was psychologically vulnerable enough to fall for his tricks in the first place, and also because she's probably the last person that he'd suspect. I'd be looking at her as the best potential target to manipulate into turning on him. In fact, Sand here's so crazy that it might not be too hard to turn him against himself if you played into his delusions and narcissism. But if that fails, then there's always the option to get physical. The guy's right-hand man here looks like he's about 60 and wouldn't be much of a threat in a hand-to-hand fight. Whatever he's planning to summon with that horn is probably the real threat here. But if you could break it before he had the chance to whistle out a tune, then that problem would be solved. Now there's one last thing that needs to be mentioned before we get back to the action. Mandy, don't be telling creepy ladies where you live, especially when it's an isolated cabin in the middle of the woods. Not every stranger is dangerous, but when you're interacting with someone that you don't know very well, there's many little things about them that you can easily observe to make sure that you stay on the safe side. One of the top behaviors that experts warn you to watch out for are sneaky questions about your personal life thrown into the flow of a normal conversation. Marlene here complimented her shirt and asked her about the book that she was reading to get her guard down, before switching the topic to what she really wanted to know, which was where the girl lived, and successfully getting her to share this very personal information. That's bad enough. But the way Marlene reacted to her answer was the real sign that she was up to no good. People will show behaviors called micro-expressions that hint what they're really thinking. A movement of the face or eyes that doesn't fit with the vibe of the conversation is a major warning sign that the person has other things on their mind. Marlene here practically fell over backwards when she managed to talk Mandy into telling her where she lives, and then ended the conversation with a "see you later." That sounded a lot more like a threat than a friendly goodbye. For me, that's all I'd need to hear to be booby-trapping my house up like the kid from Home Alone the minute that I was off the clock. You should always trust your gut instincts when meeting someone for the first time, because it's better to be safe than sorry. That night, the cultists take their van and park at a short distance from the house, Brother Swan getting out and stepping into the headlights while the others watch. He makes two loud, drawn-out whistles that echo through the empty countryside. Swan climbs back into the van, telling the others that there's nothing left to do now but wait. For a minute, it seems like nothing is going to happen, but that's when the air all around them fills with the red mist, and they see several sets of headlights approaching them from out of the darkness. It's the Black Skulls, a demonic biker gang with an appetite for torture and human flesh, summoned from their lair by the sound of the horn. Visibly nervous, Swan gets out followed by the others as the rider's leader approaches, offering him a drink of some nasty blood-filled concoction from a mason jar, which he immediately chugs down. His hunger is not satisfied. The biker demands more, but Swan tells him that before he gets what he wants, he'll have to fulfill his end of the bargain. Meanwhile, Red and Mandy are in their home, peacefully watching a movie on their TV and completely unaware of what's happening right outside. Later on, while they're lying in bed, Mandy here has a bad dream, possibly sensing that the cult and the Black Skulls are watching them from the tree line. Suddenly, the bedroom lights start to flicker as the bikers make their way into the house. Standing over the bed, they attack the couple and drag them to the floor, stomping Red unconscious and giving Mandy over to the cult while they claim this curly-haired kid for their next victim. Okay, this is not good. It looks like these freaks barely had to break a sweat to get the jump on Red and Mandy here. Now, you're probably never going to run into a crazed death cult and their pet demonic biker gang. But just in case, there's some defensive steps that you can take. Horror fans know that it's a bad idea to ever even set foot inside a cabin in the woods. But what if you were crazy enough to actually make one your home? Would you be ready for whatever might come creeping around in the middle of the night? It seems like a peaceful lifestyle, but the truth is that living out in the countryside can be just as dangerous as in the heart of a bustling city if you aren't prepared for what you might run into out there. This could mean adopting some dogs, upgrading your place with a fence along the property line, and a locked entry gate, investing in a home security system, motion-activated floodlights, and of course, some good old-fashioned firepower. Most people aren't out to get you, but it never hurts to be prepared. That way, you won't end up like Red and Mandy here. At night, when Red returned home from work, he just walked right in through the open door and scared the crap out of Mandy here. Locking the doors can only get you so far though, when your whole house is practically made of windows. I'm not saying that it's Red and Mandy's fault that a bunch of whacked out hippies decided to attack out of nowhere, but it clearly couldn't hurt to at least be prepared for the possibility, especially when your girlfriend likes to go around giving weird old ladies your house's exact coordinates. The unfortunate reality here is that they made themselves much too easy of a target for these psychos, and now they're going to have to fight for their lives if they ever want to escape. After a while, Mandy wakes up tied to a chair. The woman tells her not to be scared, and that Red will be fine as long as she doesn't try to fight back or escape, only to immediately get up and slap her hard across the face out of jealousy for their leader. Walking over to the counter, she grabs a dropper of some unknown substance, splashing it in her eye while Lucy holds it open and then finishing the rest herself. Next, she uses a pair of metal tongs to pull a massive insect out of a jar and holds it up to her neck, piercing her skin with the stinger and injecting her with its venom, the world around her blurring as she slips into a hallucinatory daze. Okay, Mandy here is in a tough spot to say the least. The cult is trying to use Red as a bargaining chip to get her to play along, but there's really no guarantee that they'll keep their word and leave him unharmed. Which is why, if I were in her position, I'd immediately start doing whatever I could to get out of there. Those creeps were smart enough to use rope here instead of duct tape, which makes our escape significantly more difficult. For starters, I'd try flexing my forearms by making a fist and then opening my hands over and over to loosen up the ropes and see if I could somehow manage to slip out. If that wasn't working, then there's always the option of throwing your weight backwards as hard as you can and hopefully breaking the chair itself. This old lady and her teenage friend don't look like much of a threat, and I'd rather take my chances battling it out with them than sticking around to see whatever the rest of the cult had planned for me next. If Mandy here could break free of those restraints and win the brawl against these two, then the kitchen should be full of weapons that she could use to defend herself. And since she's still in her own house, she should know the best route to quietly sneak away without alerting any of the others. It's not a foolproof plan, but when the alternative is staying for dinner with a psychopathic death cult, you have to take some risks if you want to survive. The women take Mandy down the hallway and seat her in the middle of the living room in front of the rest of the cult, which is when she meets Sand for the first time, and he explains in his delusional way how he became obsessed with her early that morning. Standing up, he demands that Mandy look at him and asks her what she sees, and she replies that she sees his death quickly approaching. This isn't exactly what he wanted to hear, but he keeps his cool and says that he'll win her over after they spend enough time together. Walking to the front of the room, he explains that he prefers to express his love through music, putting on a record of one of his songs and ranting about how he never received the praise and popularity as an artist that he thinks he deserves. As he leans in closer, he tells Mandy that when he was at his lowest point, he had an extreme religious breakthrough that allowed him to finally feel accepted and in control, with the permission to go into the world and take whatever he desired for himself. The creep expects her to be convinced, but instead of falling under his spell, Mandy here starts laughing in his face, treating his whole song and dance as nothing but a joke. This sends him into a full-blown mental breakdown, unable to face the fact that she sees him for the delusional failure that he is. Sand shouts at her to shut up over and over again, but Mandy keeps laughing away, so he turns his anger on his followers, demanding that they look away from the pathetic scene. Crying into the mirror, he begs his reflection to tell him what to do, and that's when he comes up with a brutal plan. Outside, Red wakes up unable to move with his hands tied above his head. Sand comes over, followed by Swan and Lucy, angry about not being able to brainwash Mandy and saying that they're going to show him what real love looks like by making Lucy here play Russian roulette to prove her loyalty. All that Red can do is watch as the girl takes the weapon and pulls the trigger, but thankfully she survives. Kneeling down, Swan pulls out a huge ceremonial dagger and tells Red to have a look. The blade flashes with green light as he hands it over to their leader, who gets right in Red's face and stabs him deep in the side of the chest. The man howls in pain, but the cult isn't done with him just yet. Sand tells him that they wasted those substances on Mandy, when what they really need is the cleansing power of fire instead, and what happens next is completely horrifying. As he watches helplessly, the cult carries Mandy out of the house wrapped up in sheets and throws her to the ground in front of him, before tying a rope around her feet and hoisting her up into the air. After covering her with gasoline, Swan strikes a match and holds it against the cloth, quickly engulfing her in flames and forcing Red to watch her burn. The fire continues until there's nothing left of her but a pile of ash. And with their business finished, the cult gets in their cars and drives away, leaving Red still alive. But that was their biggest mistake. Once they're gone, Red finally manages to slip one of his hands through the wire, untying his restraints and setting himself free. He crawls over to the smoldering pile of ashes, holding onto what's left of Mandy's head until a gust of wind blows it away. But the nightmare is only just getting started. Okay, this guy just made the worst mistake of his life. Not only is he a pathetic weirdo, but he's not very smart either, because now he's got a pissed off lumberjack ready to hunt him down. Jeremiah Sand, you have seriously f***ed up. Red and Mandy here were just a happy couple, living peacefully at their house by the lake. So innocent and harmless that they didn't even lock their doors at night, because nothing bad ever happens at a cabin in the woods. But then here you come looking like the Wish version of Bret Michaels with a couple hillbillies and someone's grandma to ruin everything. Was the fact that anyone who isn't brainwashed can tell that your music sucks too much for your fragile ego to handle? Did your parents not love you enough as a child? Poor little Jeremiah couldn't handle rejection, so he had to create a whole religion just to feel special. If being a musician was easy, then we'd all have a platinum album. This whole thing you've got going on here, it's weird, and karma is going to catch up with you eventually. Did you ever stop for a second to consider the possibility that instead of spiraling into a pit of despair, this guy might come after you on a revenge-fueled rampage? You leave a guy with nothing left to live for, and that just means that he's got nothing left to lose. Of course he's going to come after you. And you've only got yourself to blame for what's about to happen next. I wish I could say that the worst thing about you is just how cringe you are, but unfortunately, you've convinced enough people to join your delusional little group that you're actually somehow dangerous? So congratulations, I guess? Something tells me that you'll get what's coming to you one day, and I personally can't wait to see it. When you've got a whole group of devoted supporters and a gang of demonic bikers working for you, and you still can't get anything right, Jeremiah Sand, you f***ed up. Furious and heartbroken, Red stumbles back in the house and finds the shirt that she was wearing thrown carelessly across the floor, picking it up and holding it close to his chest. So he stands there in confusion as he watches a cheddar goblin mascot vomit mac and cheese all over some kids in a bizarre commercial. After a moment, a test of the emergency broadcast system comes on and snaps him out of his trance, and he shuffles over to the bed, passing out from exhaustion. When he finally wakes up, Red makes his way to the bathroom and takes out a hidden bottle of alcohol, taking several long swigs and pouring it on his wounds. As the rage, grief, pain, and vodka start to kick in all at once, polishing off the rest of the bottle as he realizes what he has to do. Red goes to this trailer out in the middle of the woods where he finds his friend, an old hermit named Carruthers, and retrieves a crossbow that the man had been holding onto for him. As he goes to leave, Carruthers asks him what he's planning to do, and when Red responds that he's going hunting, his friend gives him some specially forged bolts that should make short work of any prey, saying that they're all his as long as he promises to put them to good use. Sitting down on the guy's bed, Red finally decides to open up and tells his friend that a gang of psycho cultists and demonic bikers tied him up and lit Mandy on fire. Carruthers here immediately knows that he's talking about the Black Skulls, explaining that they've been attacking travelers and causing terror in the area for a long time. According to the legends, they used to run smuggling jobs for a supplier of highly potent illegal substances. Eventually, the supplier wanted to get rid of them, so he made them a bad batch of the stuff that turned them completely insane. He says that they've recently been seen by the Spirit River, but warns Red that they're extremely dangerous and have an obsession with pain, so if he's going to go after them, he probably won't survive. Before the battle, Red goes to his workshop and pours molten metal into a mold, forging himself this impressive-looking axe as his own custom-made demon-slaying tool. Now he's officially ready to slide for Mandy, and first he's going after the Black Skulls. Okay, it's time for revenge, and Red here is ready to dish it out, but he's going up against some pretty terrifying odds. It'd be bad enough if these bikers just had him outnumbered 4-1, but they're all hopped up on who knows what, and armed to the teeth. Plus, they aren't afraid of the pain, they actually get off on it. So if you want to survive, then it's incredibly important to go into this fight well prepared. The axe and the crossbow are some sweet weapons, but the only problem is one requires you to get in close and the other one only has 2 bolts. Simple math tells us that when we've got 4 bikers and 6 cultists to kill, 2 bolts just isn't going to cut it. But besides offensive options, it'd probably be smart to think about keeping yourself patched up as well. Maybe a quick trip to the local pharmacy to stock up on first aid supplies would also be a wise decision. Sure, bringing some Advil to an axe fight is a bit of a Boy Scout move, but if we're going to see this revenge quest all the way to the finish line, then we've got to think about long-term survivability here. And when we're going into battle against a bunch of Hellraiser Cenobite biker demons, it can't hurt to be prepared. Now, if Red here didn't want to fight them head on, then he does still have an option for a more calculated approach. Think about it this way, the bikers aren't loyal to the cult, they're hired help. So all that he'd have to do is offer them a better deal and he could send them to kill off all the cultists and do the dirty work for him. There's gotta be someone in town he doesn't like that would make a good sacrifice. But Red here isn't looking for help. He's looking for blood. And now it's time to make these freaks pay.
Coming soon to a theater near you, How to Beat's official Patreon. All the guts, all the blood, all the screams, plus nasty extras. How to Beat's Patreon. 2 times the shock, 2 times the terror, 2 times the subscription levels. Have a damn good day, and it only gets better. Both levels bid you welcome to pre-sales for ghoulish official How to Beat merchandise, and support the evil scientists behind the How to Beat videos. It only gets better. Subscribers are invited to the X-rated party. Ad-free and uncensored videos too repulsive for all audiences are available on demand. How to Beat's Patreon. In space, no one can hear you scream, but on Patreon, everyone can see you bleed. How to Beat's Patreon. Join us if you dare.
Somewhere in the woods late that night, Red posts up in the tree line and waits for the riders to approach. As the last one races by, he fires an arrow, striking him dead on and knocking him off of his bike. Jumping back in his truck, he speeds to where the man went down, smiling like a maniac as he slams into the freak at full speed and kills him. But somehow, the biker's armor sends the truck flipping off of the road, knocking Red unconscious from the impact. Sometime later, Red wakes up in the biker's hideout, with his right hand cuffed to a pipe and his left hand nailed to the floorboards. This biker hears him shouting in pain and comes over to slash his chest with a switchblade, ruining his favorite shirt. Coming back with a pair of brass knuckles, she punches Red twice across the face, but he stomps on her foot and quickly breaks the loose pipe off of the wall, slamming her across the side of the head with it and knocking her down into a pit. Grabbing onto the nail, he pries it out of his hand and gets to his feet, and walks walks to the next room where he arms himself with a rusty box cutter and the biker's leather vest. Red emerges from the basement into the rest of the house. He searches through the house, holding the knife out in front of him until he finally comes to the living room and sees the biker burying his face in a pile of illegal substances. Sneaking in for the kill, Red stealthily approaches the freak from behind, but notices his reflection at the last second and grabs Red's arm, throwing him over the couch and through the table. The man dives on top of him, but Red quickly stabs him in the neck. Suddenly, the TV next to him explodes, as the biker that he thought he killed in the basement fires at him with a sawed-off shotgun across the room, and he combat rolls over the couch, closing the distance and headbutting her while he rips the weapon out of her hands. The biker starts slashing at him with a kitchen knife, but Red expertly dodges the attacks, grabbing her arm and slamming her into the wall before snapping her neck with his bare hands. Okay, Red managed to clutch the 3-on-1 and pull off the W, but he cut it a little bit close here. Although he definitely got the job done, there's still one biker and a whole cult that needs to be taken out after this. So going into those fights with a little bit of strategy might have been a better idea. If it were me, I might have tried to take the bikers on by luring them into a trap, like cutting the power and ambushing whoever wanted to check out the fuse box, making some noise to lure them into a room where I was waiting for them in the shadows, or setting the house on fire and picking them off one by one as they ran outside. And then there's his choice of weapon, a little box cutter. Really? I mean, it worked, but he had to walk right through the kitchen to get there. So he could have at least looked around for a steak knife or meat cleaver. In fact, we're about to see that his custom-made axe and the crossbow with its bolts were sitting right there in the kitchen the whole time. So if he'd just taken a moment to look around, he would have had both of those to fight with. Also, I'd want to take that last one's shotgun and look around the house for some more ammo before moving on. I get that Red spent a lot of time working on that cool axe and really wants to use it, but what's more important here? Style or results? There's only one biker left before it's time to go after the cult, and things are about to get absolutely insane. Heading back to the kitchen, Red finds his axe hanging up on the wall and his crossbow tucked away in a cabinet and starts loading sharp objects into a duffel bag to use later. Sitting there on the counter is a jar of mysterious gray slime, and after dipping his finger in for a little taste, he experiences a brain-melting hallucination of a radio tower before coming back to reality, now in full-blown murder mode. Red climbs out through the window and leaps down from the deck where he sees the biker's leader standing in front of a burning car. Taking aim with his crossbow, he fires a bolt into the man's back, but the freak stands there unfazed, pulling it straight through as blood gushes from his throat without showing any signs of pain. Out of ammo, Red closes in to finish the job with his axe, but the biker dodges his swing and starts slashing back at him with his metal claws. The two trade blows until Red manages to knock the man to the ground, only for him to roll out of the way of his strikes and get back up to his feet. Finally, Red stuns him and kicks him into the burning car, engulfing him in flames. But even as he's cooking alive, the biker won't stop taunting him about Mandy's death. So Red brings the axe straight down on his neck, severing his head. Taking one of their quads, Red makes his way to the radio tower that he saw in his vision, and inside he finds the supplier who made the substances that drove the bikers insane. The man can sense his presence and turns around with his hands raised to show that he doesn't want any trouble. As the lights in the garage come on, they reveal a tiger in a cage that the man used to test his products. But after seeing Red's disapproving glare, he decides to set the animal free, and it sneaks away into the wilderness. Red here still hasn't said anything, but the man can sense what happened between him and the cult, and tells him exactly where to find them so that he can complete his quest for revenge. Riding through some old mining tunnels, he comes out in the middle of an otherworldly landscape, and keeps going until his quad gets stuck, forcing him to go the rest of the way on foot. In the morning, Red wakes up on the riverside in the middle of a defrosted area. Eventually, he comes to a cliff overlooking a deep valley where the cultists have built their church. Brother Swan here takes Lucy in the van for a drive into town, but he doesn't get far before running over a pile of caltrops that Red placed in the middle of the road and popping his tires. As soon as he gets out to see what happened, Red bursts out from hiding and blasts him with a punch straight to the jaw before stunning him with a headbutt and letting him slump to the ground in front of a tree. Even Even with his death about to be delivered, the delusional creep can't resist taunting him about his dead girlfriend. So as he's talking, Red jams the pointed end of the axe into his mouth. Looking at Sister Lucy, he realizes that she's just an innocent kid who was brainwashed by the creeps, and makes the noble decision to spare her life. The others, however, won't be so lucky. Okay, Red might have decided to be the bigger man and not kill Sister Lucy, but I don't know if I would have made the same decision here, and there's a few reasons why. First of all, she was totally involved with what happened to Mandy, and there's no arguing that one. She helped Mother Marilyn pump her full of substances and hand her over to sand, and sat back and watched while they burned her alive. If she actually wanted to help, she could have tried to secretly untie Red or caused a distraction to buy them more time. But when push came to shove, she was fine with letting an innocent woman be killed and do nothing about it, all because her group's leader got his little feelings hurt. If your friends hurt someone and you're involved in any way, then you're considered guilty too, even if you didn't actually hurt them yourself. So if the court would hold Lucy accountable, then why shouldn't Red here? Plus, there's also the fact that she could still be loyal to Sand, and if Red leaves her alive now, then she might come back and sneak attack him later down the line. If he's not going to cross her off the board, then the only option left is to let her go and hope for the best. It's time to head for the church. But before leaving, I'd also want to search the cult's van for any useful tools, weapons, or information that could give me an advantage in the fight. If he wanted to, he could actually use the van as a way to get in close without drawing attention. Even with the flat tire, he could still make it back to their hideout, and since it's a vehicle that they know, it shouldn't raise any alarms until he's already made it through the perimeter. I hope that I'm wrong here, and letting Lucy go doesn't come back to bite him. But until the job is totally done, Red should seriously watch his back. Closing in on the church, Red spots this freak Brother Hanker polishing up his car, and before the man even knows what's coming, he flings his axe through the air, killing him instantly. Further down the path, he finds a chainsaw laying on the ground, picking it up and trying his best to get it started, as he comes around the corner to face off with a third cult member, Brother Klopek. Seeing Red and knowing that it's time for a fight, the man quickly stands up, revealing that he's got an even bigger chainsaw, and starts it on the first pull. Red keeps trying to start his own weapon, but can't get it running, and has to hold it above his head to block the man's first attack. Countering with a kick, Red manages to knock him back and create some space, finally able to get his own chainsaw running as the freak rushes at him for round 2. After dodging his next swing, he finds an opening and slices the guy across the stomach, but it's just a flesh wound, and Klopek goes back on the offensive, headbutting him and stabbing at his chest with the spinning blade. Red maneuvers away and strikes back, catching Klopek on the arm and knocking the weapon out of his hands. But when he moves in for the kill shot, the man grabs the chainsaw and knocks it away before dropping him with a punch to the face. Laughing, he picks up the smaller chainsaw and goes to finish the job. But Red rises to his feet, grabbing a nearby metal chain and swinging it above his head like a lasso. Throwing it forward, he wraps the chain around the man's neck and pulls him straight down onto the still running giant chainsaw, tearing open his chest and killing him once and for all. Finally, Red arrives at the church and notices a trapdoor full of red fog cut out of the floor, deciding to climb down there and see who's hiding in the tunnels. Okay, it looks like we're at the end of the road. The only 2 threats left are Mother Marilyn and Sand himself, and they should be easy pickings for Red here. But still, this close to the finish line, you can never be too careful. Instead of blindly going down into those tunnels, I might have tried staking the place out for a while and picking them off as they come up, because who knows what powerful weapons or other demonic creatures they could be hiding down there. He could even try lighting the place on fire from the surface to see if it speeds up the process a little bit. Fighting on unknown territory is always more dangerous, and a little patience goes a long way when you're so close to victory. It's time for Sand to finally get what's coming to him. Let's just hope that someone or something else doesn't stop Red before he gets the chance. Searching through the depths, he eventually comes to a chamber where Mother Marilyn is sobbing in the middle of the room. This Smeagol-looking freak begs him to spare her life, offering him anything that she can to convince him, but Red isn't interested in hearing what she has to say. The only thing that he wants is revenge, and she's the next one up on the chopping block. Further down the tunnel, Red finds the man who started it all. Red tosses the head of Mother Marilyn at his feet. Red emerges from the darkness with his axe in his hands, but this maniac still insists that he won't be able to harm him, going on and on about how he's too special to die. Unfortunately for him, Red disagrees and grabs him by the head as the man immediately switches from delusional ramblings to begging for his life. Saying that he's his god now, Red squeezes Sand's head until the man's eyes erupts from its socket, pulling out his lighter and burning the corpse. Red climbs back up to the surface and walks away as the entire church burns and crumbles to the ground. Getting into a car, he sees a vision of Mandy sitting with him in the passenger seat and smiles as he drives off into the distance through the strange, otherworldly landscape.
But what would you do? If you and your girlfriend were attacked by an evil gang of biker hippies in the middle of the woods and you saw them kill her in front of you, would you sit there and weep and eventually pass away? Or would you craft an axe from the finest steel and go on a hunt for revenge? Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this. This is a reminder that we upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a damn good day.
A demon that has stalked your family for decades and turned your life into a nightmare is back, and this time, it's after your daughter. It can possess anyone instantly and wants revenge on you. Oh, and you're also stuck inside of an insane asylum. What can you do to save not just your own life, but your daughter's as well? Let's break down the fatal mistakes, right moves, and how to beat the Blood Moon Demon in Legions. A supernatural creature is about to terrorize this man's life for decades to come. Looking after the small village in the jungles of Argentina, this shaman Antonio Puijo describes a time in the missionary jungle where he came in contact with a terrifying demon. He dons a tribal mask while waving down this couple holding an unconscious girl. She's laid down next to the ceremonial equipment, while this elderly lady, Serena, quietly stares before leaving him with the girl. Antonio takes off his mask, kneeling down and inspecting her face. Suddenly, the girl's eyes open and she tightly grips his arm, forcing Antonio to pull away from her. The girl's body violently convulses as she stands up and lunges at his throat. Antonio forcibly pushes her away, running into the hut as she walks out of his sight. That's when she appears right in front of him, grabbing a hold of Antonio while he holds the door shut and looks for something to help cleanse the demon. He runs over, throwing a piece of cloth onto the girl. Antonio throws a vial of holy liquid onto her body as smoke evaporates from her skin. The villagers hear a scream coming from inside the hut, but the leader insists that they stay back. She slowly walks towards the building and finds Antonio caressing the possessed girl. An older Antonio explains that this event happened a long time ago to this blonde woman, Olga. He informs her that there are demons lying around everywhere that normal people aren't aware of. The doctor takes a cigarette away, wheeling Antonio outside of the waiting room as he complains about the non-smoking policy. He's taken to the leader of the clinic, Doria, who reviews his file, which mentions he was assigned to the clinic after being found not guilty of murder because of psychopathy. Doria comments on his improving health, suggesting he leave his wheelchair. She compliments his theater activities within the hospital, asking him how he's currently feeling. Antonio admits the young people he works with make him sad, fearing for the future generation. Later, he watches a theater rehearsal as his creepily dressed devil slowly walks up behind him. Olga approaches him to scold the man for wearing his costume off stage, demanding him to join the others now. She offers for Antonio to join them on stage, but he tells her that he has no interest in acting. She confronts the man on his poor attitude, insisting that he stop drowning in his sadness and do something about it. The other actors approach to inform her that this man Roberto has an issue with the script. The bald man directly asks Antonio to recall what his character says during the scene, being confused about his phrase, "Go demon from the four hells." Antonio refuses to respond while they continue to pester him about their lines not making sense. He informs the actor that these stories are based on his own life experiences, as they tell Antonio that his script is being changed by this man Roberto. That's when Antonio interrupts the rehearsal, informing the director that a shaman can't stare into a creature's eyes or they would lose their power. Frustrated, the director confronts him on how ridiculous his stories seem. Antonio tells them they should do another play or stick with his original vision. The actors insist they want to keep it as accurate as possible. The director decides to take a break and storms off stage, while the others consider replacing Roberto. Olga refuses to change him, telling them that this is already the third director. Antonio interrupts to ask them if they'd like to hear the most important story of his life, gathering the attention of everyone around him. The man reveals that he has a daughter who was born under a blood red moon, with the woman from the tribal community he was living with. After a violent birth. The newborn was carried back to him, and they were now a family. But there was a problem. That night, Antonio noticed something wrong with his wife. She's whispering to Quaraya, offering the demon their child. He stands up to see a strange figure circling his hut. He walks outside the check, kicking around the drawing of a cursed symbol on the dirt outside his hut. The next morning, Antonio walks to the waterfall where he sets up a place of prayer and conducts a ritual to protect his newborn child. A local woman, Isarina, helps and weaves a necklace made up of ornaments, blowing smoke over it, and to protect her from evil, the most dangerous spirit the girl can encounter, called Quaraya. That night, Antonio spots his wife walking strangely slow and mindlessly outside their house. The apparition suddenly turns into a deadly creature. He sees his wife lying on the bed again and goes inside. Her eyes and mouth leak a black liquid, and the man realizes Quaraya has killed her. Okay, that's unfortunate. Elena's mother, Amanda, is now dead. That's horrible for many reasons. Yes, all the awful things that come from losing a parent will now be a part of Elena's life. But there are also bigger repercussions from this death. Quaraya is now much closer to taking the child's soul. Amanda's death would have been hard to avoid. She was weakened by the strenuous birth of Elena. She came from a different community than Antonio, likely one with different beliefs, so her own faith and ability to ward off demons will be different than Antonio's. Although Antonio had help from Isarina, the old woman, during and following Elena's birth, this was still not enough to save Amanda. Perhaps they should have made her a sacred necklace as well, though considering that she was already possessed by Quaraya, the necklace might have had no effect. Undoubtedly, it will be nearly impossible for Antonio to shrug off such a devastating loss, yet perhaps easier for Elena, as she's still an infant. She will grow up with no memory of her mother. The next few years are going to be some of the most crucial in Elena's life. Quaraya is after her blood, that's clear. The strange conditions of the child's birth, specifically being born on a blood red moon, and to a shaman have put her at risk. Neither of these could have been altered, so the upbringing of the child is the key to her survival. As Isarina points out, her faith must save her. The necklace that Antonio and Isarina made is something of an amulet that will help ward off Quaraya, and presumably other evil spirits. Keeping it around Elena's neck is a foregone conclusion, but perhaps there are other ways to help her. Once Elena is of an age to understand, Antonio should begin training his daughter in their mystic religious practices. In this case, an early indoctrination is necessary to save her life. As a child, humans are more willing to understand any new concept presented to them. The older Elena grows without learning the truth of her heritage, her mother's death, and how to fight against these mystical creatures, the higher the probability of her rejecting all this information. That rejection will open her up to being easier prey to Quaraya. The necklace can only do so much for Elena. The rest must come from within, which right now means that Antonio must train her. He can use Isarina for assistance here, as the argument for the existence of these soul-eating demons, such as Quaraya, will be more convincing if multiple people can not only tell Elena about them, but also give physical evidence. It would be an awful idea to try and summon Quaraya to prove to the young girl that he's real. It's doubtful that Antonio would do this, since he's a shaman. Though Antonio will likely have other religious duties to perform, other exorcism-type rituals he must conduct. He could bring Elena to these to bear witness to the truth of the spirit world. Completely exposing her to all these dangerous situations runs a large risk. What if she becomes possessed herself? With Isarina's help, which she seems willing to give, Elena can be slowly and safely exposed to these rituals from a distance. This will strengthen her faith and give her more protection against Quaraya now that her mother is gone. In the present, the director returns to tell Antonio that he must stop distracting the actors or else he'll be forced to leave. Later, Antonio is visited by his lawyer, Marcelo Warren, who questions what happened to his arm. The man informs him that his team will be returning next week with good news about his case. Warren continues by commenting that his daughter is growing as a professional, working all day to survive. She seems to have achieved her dream of normalcy. That's when he moves back to the subject of Antonio, and insists that he stay out of trouble from now on, ensuring that their case goes smoothly. Antonio is distracted by a news report on TV, which states that an astrological phenomenon of a blood red moon will occur this Friday, affecting human relationships around the world, and potentially causing natural disasters. Somewhere in the city, a grown Elena works in an advertising agency. She's having trouble coming up with a slogan for a new advertising campaign. Her coworker comes over to discuss her campaign pitch the next day. The coworker expresses her stress levels are causing her eye to form a sty, for which Elena recommends a home remedy. When the coworker asks how Elena knows this, she quickly bluffs and says she read it in a magazine when she was younger, not wanting to reveal the truth about her father. That night, Elena labors over the campaign pitch. Her husband Warren, Antonio's lawyer, appears, and the two discuss their jobs. He leaves her with the work. Fast asleep that night, a demon slithers above Elena's head, waking her up. She stares at the dark corner of her room, waiting to see if something is there, then turns the light on to find no one. Meanwhile, Antonio eats food in the dining hall, being approached by a worker who informs him that he is a visitor, but it's not his lawyer. Antonio walks outside and finds a woman, Clara, waiting in the lobby. A religious woman Antonio knew when he lived in the jungle. She hands him a tobacco pipe, which he begins smoking. The substance in the pipe gives him a vision. He can see both Clara and Serena in the same face. They inform him that Elena is in dire trouble. Quaraya wants to sacrifice his daughter on the night of the red moon, offering her blood as a gift to the evil one, a more fearsome spirit. Together, they must kill Quaraya. To do so, Elena will need to restore her faith to be saved. Okay, something wicked this way comes. Things are gearing up for an intense showdown. Quaraya is back, at least according to Clara, and it's probably wise to believe her. The blood red moon under which Elena was born will return this Friday, so Clara expects that is when Quaraya will strike. She claims he will give the offering of Elena's blood and soul to the evil one. Whomever that is, nobody wants to meet him. How can Antonio save Elena? As we've known all along, Elena's best defense against the demon is her own faith in the spiritual world, but she has lost that faith long ago, though we don't know why. Antonio, on the other hand, likely does, and this knowledge will be crucial to restoring her faith. An educated guess will reveal that Elena has not spoken with her father in years. He's in the psych clinic after being tried for murder, of which he was found not guilty because of psychopathy. Since Antonio is having to ask his lawyer Warren for information about his daughter's life, she's probably not coming to visit him often, if ever. Communication between the two is necessary. How can Antonio orchestrate contact with her? For one, he could talk with Warren and ask him to attempt to arrange a meeting with his daughter. To Antonio's knowledge, Warren has regular contact with her and would be able to pass along this request. He doesn't seem aware that Warren is married or dating his daughter, which this connection will come in handy, since it's reasonable that Warren would have a great impact on his wife's decision-making. This method has a downside. It will take a very long time. The visiting hours of the psych clinic are unclear, but even if they allow visitors every day, it's more likely that Elena would not come the very next day, if at all. The clock is already ticking towards Friday's blood red moon when Quaraya plans to kill Elena. She needs to speak to her father as soon as possible. A better plan would be to enlist Clara's help. Clara clearly has a working knowledge of the situation. She understood the danger that awaits Elena and found Antonio to warn him. It would make sense if Clara had some information about Elena's whereabouts. If not, considering she found Antonio, it should not be too difficult for her to find his daughter. This method might eventually be better than having Antonio contact Elena right out of the gate. Elena seems to have a strained, if not estranged, relationship with her father. She's not coming to visit him in the hospital, remember? If her father suddenly appeared and demanded to talk with her and told her a demon was on its way to kill her in just a few days, she would probably not react well. Who wouldn't? Instead, having Clara initiate the conversation will likely lead to more success in convincing Elena to come to the psych clinic. But what about Antonio? Is he best used just waiting around in his hospital gown? Probably not. He shouldn't come barging through and rile up his daughter's life just yet, but he should be prepared for a showdown with Quaraya. He cannot simply check himself out of the clinic, as he didn't go there voluntarily, but perhaps others can help.